Ladies and gentlemen, I have sitting in front of me the very... Oh, no, he pressed the button. I'm sitting with the top of the org chart for the Timcast Media Organization.
He's changing our
He's
tabs.
leaving. Bucko. His name is Bucko, and he's the boss. So
He is, yes.
He's out. He was hanging out for a little bit.
Yeah.
We got to schedule it with him next time.
We're live.
We have to get an appointment.
Hey, yeah, you know, he's really hard to get a hold of. He sleeps all day.
He does.
He's the epitome of capitalism. I mean, he's the boss. He does no work. His eyes are half closed as he lazily sits there. We break our backs every day, and then he's the one who gets the rewards. He doesn't got to pay any bills. He gets all his food and everything taken care of.
We clean up his poop.
Yeah, even cleaning up his
Yeah.
poop.
It's lovable.
I hope you're all enjoying the show. Hey, everybody. How's it going? Welcome to Timcast IRL. If you haven't already, subscribe, smash the like button. And we got a bunch of stories, a lot having to do with Antifa riots, this autonomous zone in Minneapolis, the Chauvin trial, and what's going on with some of the jurors. Apparently today in the good old Pacific Northwest, Antifa was out and about trying to smash their way into banks. There's like a photo of like a cop coming out. He's got a gun. And so we're going to talk about a lot of this stuff, and we'll get into what's going on. We also have got Cuomo. He's being referred, his actions, to the police. The latest harassment claim against them is fairly serious, I suppose. And we'll get into all this stuff. There's some other cool stuff. AOC and Matt Gaetz working together on marijuana legalization. And then we've got some gun control laws, and we're talking about a lot of guns. But today we are hanging out with Kim Iversen. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Kim Iversen. I'm a political YouTuber, right? For now, while YouTube keeps me on. And I would say I'm a progressive on the progressive left, but libertarian.
But like the Tulsi kind of progressive.
Right. I was a big Tulsi supporter and more of a more libertarian progressive, if there is a thing.
It's politically homeless, I guess.
I don't know if I am, though. I think there's enough of me.
Enough of you?
Yeah. So I don't feel like I'm that homeless. I just think that I think we haven't figured out our address yet. I should put it that way. The numbers haven't been put on the house, but there's a house.
Well, I think you're critical of war, and you criticize the Democrats, and you criticize COVID lockdowns.
Right. I was the only progressive, I think, actually, that's what kind of differentiated me. And then a lot of people started calling me far right or something.
Well, that basically means, yeah, of course, if you don't agree with the orthodoxy in the cathedral, maybe that's the easiest way to put it. It doesn't matter what your political alignment is. Are you with or against the cathedral? You know
what they call us heretics?
Yeah.
Either you're a heretic or you're sort of a heretic.
Yeah,
Am I a heretic? So.
I'm definitely anti-establishment.
Yeah.
For sure.
Anti-elitist?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by that, because some elites are also anti-establishment.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't like
Trump's
write
an
off.
elite, for sure.
Yeah, right.
But he's an outsider, so it's like...
Elon Musk. He's pretty anti.
Yeah, I would say he's in that. So I don't know if I'm anti-elite. I'm not anti-rich people. I'm not anti-that.
But aren't progressives, eat the rich, tax the rich?
I would like to, right? Yeah. So more taxes, I guess, for the rich, I suppose. But yeah, so I would say anti-establishment for sure, anti-war. Well, anti-needless war.
Yeah.
Not a dove.
Yeah.
Sometimes war is necessary, I suppose.
Sounds like you're just a reasonable person.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. That's why I think that I'm not alone in my house.
I think we're all in a similar house, but it is like a lonely party. And it's not because I think most people probably agree with a lot of things we would all say. Disagree on a lot of things too, but the main agreement is that we can have the conversation. But I think a lot of people are just scared and would prefer to just say, tell me what to say. I don't want to get kicked out. So they're hanging out in the establishment house because they got all the big beers and all the big TV shows, and there are a lot of people who will
they won't deliver at our house because there's no address yet.
Exactly.
Right. It's true.
See?
Very frustrating.
We got Ian chilling.
Hey, everybody. What's up?
How's it
Ian
going?
Crossland in the house. It's going great, man.
Yeah, it's going pretty good.
Yeah, nice couple days. Kim and I talked last night about not tarot, but power cards. Like Tim's an ace of spades. Maybe we can get into it later.
You're a six
I
of
love that
spades.
stuff. Yeah.
What does that
He
mean?
is an eight of diamonds.
Ace
That's a
of
good
spades.
card. That's a really
Very
cool.
cool.
That's like the best card.
Ace of spades.
Yeah, you know that song by Motorhead?
Yeah, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Ace of Spades.
Lemmy?
Yeah.
I mean, we could get into it. I'll let you know everything you need to know about being an ace of spades.
I'm
My
sure
there's
mom's
some
an ace of spades.
downsides.
Princess Diana was an ace of spades.
What?
Yeah.
What was her birthday? Wait.
I don't know, but she was an ace of spades.
How does that make you an ace of spades?
Well, because the way it works is, so it's based on a deck of cards, but this is back before playing cards were playing cards. This is actually the system that this was built on was when playing cards are actually a sort of like a Bible to a certain group of people. And they think that it maybe stemmed from people somewhere in the Middle East. this system. So, you've got Chinese astrology, right, with what year you're born, and then you have Western astrology with like you're a Pisces, I'm an Aries, we're Aries, right, Leo here.
Mm-hmm.
So this one is some sort of Middle Eastern astrology, and they based it on a deck of cards, and basically each day has a different card. And of course, there's 52 cards, and there's more than 52 days. So some cards get reused, some cards don't. So some cards, I believe there's as many as 13 days associated with one single card that have different.
March 9th is Ace of Spades.
March 9th is Ace of Spades. So everybody born on March 9th is an Ace of Spades. But then then also I could tell you everybody born, I believe it would be April 11th, I think is also. Maybe it's April 11th, or maybe it's April 7th. Sorry, everybody born April 7th is also an Ace of Spades. So it's
let's
Yeah.
I want to talk about this, but we'll start with the news stuff first.
Yeah, let's get that out of the
Before we
way.
get to the crazy stuff, and that's not what my show is about. I don't want anybody to think this is what I
Should
do.
be. I love it.
Right? It's just
Maybe-
a side hobby of what I like. It's just something like that, but I am legit, okay?
All right, I believe it.
Foreign
I believe
policy
it.
expert. I mean, more or less.
Right.
Right?
There you
That's
go.
your area of focus is
Right,
foreign
mostly, well, until COVID, and then I got into the virus stuff, and I started talking about that stuff a lot. But yeah, foreign policy was probably my biggest, big fan of Tulsi Gabbard, friend of hers. That sort of, was really in that lane a lot, criticizing foreign policy. Traveled around, to kind of see some stuff for myself.
We're all big fans of Tulsi.
Yeah.
I love her.
Yeah.
Tulsi's great. She's really great. We'll see what she's going to do.
Well, let's get into the politics. Don't forget, we also got Sour Patch Lips
Yeah,
smashing
I
all the
am
buttons.
here in the corner. I am mashing buttons and keeping an eye on the cat. He's running around, not having
Yeah,
to be here.
it's really nerve-wracking having the boss wander around over our
know, I
shoulder.
feel really nervous.
He took his keys.
He's looking
Yeah.
at us.
And we don't even know what his card is.
He was
know,
he was
right?
up he was up here one time during the show and he started peeing in the corner.
It's true. He
Like,
did.
could you imagine your boss walking in and
I mean, it's his house.
the cat is
true.
not really our boss. We're joking.
It's like, this is what I think of this show.
That's right. Good work, everyone.
My friends, before we get started, how about I actually pull up this website
This
that
one
is
site?
the site you need to go to. Go to Timcast.
Oh,
Wait. Nope.
Oh no. It is the site. You
Is it
know
the
what
site?
site it is.
Why is it's giving me the business?
Oh,
site.
okay.
There we go.
All right. There we go.
Go to timcast.com, become a member. We got a bunch of exciting bonus episodes. We talked more extensively with Scott Pressler the other night about how he's trying to go after the America Last politicians and primary them. And so it was a really interesting conversation. But look at this amazing library of content. Some of it's very offensive, like when Jack Murphy said progressives can't be alpha and Marxism is objectively anti-masculine, and he's holding a beer as he says it. But then we have some fun stuff like Ben Stewart. We were talking about alien civilizations and DMT, and we talked about that with Clifton Duncan for some reason. So become a member because you can watch these fun bonus segments and exclusive members only stuff, and it helps us in the event that we get banned because we talk about things the establishment probably doesn't like. And like, share, subscribe, and if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, then leave us a good review because man, that really, really does help. Give us all of the stars. But let's talk about the first big story here. We have this from the Post Millennial. Antifa storm into banks in Portland, try to break inside federal courthouse. Just another day in Portland, the riot capital of the United States. And there's this photo of like an armed cop and there's a bunch of people in front. Let's just read. They say a dramatic scene unfolded in Portland this afternoon as Antifa and other left-wing activists tried to break into a Chase bank. A lone security guard managed to hold off the mob with his pistol. The Post Millennial editor-at-large, Andy No, posted footage from the left-wing mob and a bank security guard. The source of No's videos is an account titled 45th Parallel Absurdist Brigade, who documented the day's activities. They seem to be sympathetic to the protest's cause, seeing as they got nostalgic when passing by the federal courthouse, where last summer Antifa hosted nightly sieges against authorities. The day's demonstrations was a gathering meant to protest against something called Line 3, which, according to a piece last month from The Guardian, is an upcoming pipeline proposal to transfer nearly 1 million barrels of tar sands a day from Alberta, Canada, to Superior, Wisconsin, a move that is facing pushback from activists over it being constructed through Native American lands, as well as concerns about the health of the water supply as a result. The protesters went to Chase Bank because they're reportedly one of the funders of the Line 3 pipeline project. The demonstrators made their way inside after a standoff. After tagging the Chase in a nearby Apple store with graffiti, the protest made its way to Wells Fargo for an encore performance. It all came back around to the Hatfield Courthouse, where DHS and the Antifa crowd are in a standoff at the time of writing. Federal officers are currently responding to protect the courthouse as the Antifa crowd starts up their routine property damage to the area. All right, there was a lot of stories. We were like, what should we open with? There's a lot going on. Cuomo's, facing some kind of criminal charges. But this one really wrapped up a bunch of stories. You got a pipeline from Canada. You got Native American lands. You've got Antifa rioting. You've got the courthouse back in play and banks. It's like a fruit punch medley of all of the things that they're upset about. And I gotta be honest, it kind of just doesn't make sense, So we've been kind of following these stories about what's been going on with Antifa over the past year or so. And I'm interested actually to get your take, Kim, considering, you view yourself as a progressive. You focus heavily on foreign policy, but also lockdown stuff. Just what you think about what's been going on and how you feel about these individuals.
What do I think about how Antifa and everything that's been going on with the Chaz Chop areas and all these other things going on?
Yeah.
I mean, I personally, the way I view it in just kind of like an overview, kind of looking from the top down, sort of, if I were an alien coming to Earth, it just looks like everybody's becoming a little bit radicalized in the United States. And I think it's a normal thing to become radicalized. So as somebody who studies a lot of foreign policy, looking at groups like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, right, terrorist organizations, how do people get recruited into those organizations, right? They get recruited in because their life isn't where they want their life to be. They're not getting the resources that they need to live a good life. They don't feel like they can have a life with a good, have a family and have all the things and opportunity. They're lacking opportunity. So they join these extremist organizations. And I think what we're seeing happen here in the United States is that same lack of opportunity that is happening on both sides of the aisle, because it's just people in general not getting that opportunity, are now looking for a place to kind of get their anger out. And so we're seeing it manifest in a variety of ways. And I think that some of the youth are really going after they're kind of going and creating these zones like the, Chaz Chop, or I think they're just finding some ideology to hold on to be like, this is.
But are they really mad about any of this stuff?
No, it's not that. And that's kind of my point is they're not mad about. They're just exerting their anger somewhere, anywhere, and they just find a group that they think kind of aligns with them on something, and they say, okay, this sounds good, and you're going to help me get my opportunity back because we're going to take the country back. And it's that same exact mentality.
What are these Antifa people who are protesting in Minneapolis, right, setting up this new autonomous zone? I understand you could argue they're mad about the George Floyd thing. But when you see them actually go out, they went to a Chase Bank because it's some way related. That one Chase Bank has nothing to do with it. I understand. I guess the brand is a symbol of what they oppose. But I wonder, it seems like they just went out and said, we're going to get violent. We're going to smash. So they go to the courthouse. They go to different banks. They went to Wells Fargo, I guess, because banks are bad. They go smash windows at Starbucks. I get that they're angry. But what are they angry about? Like you mentioned that people get radicalized because they don't have the resources they need. Mm-hmm. I mean, these people, I can certainly understand the COVID lockdowns. Mm-hmm. But many of these people, I mean, regardless, you're still living in one of the wealthiest countries in the world. Is it a lack of perspective? Like they've not seen how bad it really is in other countries, so they just assume they have it bad, and it's really just...
I just don't think we can live the American dream anymore. And that's what I think the issue is. Well, I mean, you've been able to live the American dream, and many of us have been able to, but not everybody can. I mean, a lot of us are just riddled in student debt. I have $35,000 of student loans that I've been paying on for 17 years. I still owe $32,000 after 17 years.
And I definitely agree. That's I'm for student loan forgiveness for sure. But I think it should be based on the principle of what you borrowed and you pay back.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of nuances to it, right? But it's the overall, and there's many ways we can go about doing things like student loan forgiveness, because obviously we have to fix the system and not just, hey, we're going to give everybody a check that's, there's a lot. But my point really is that we're in a society right now that we were all told when we were children that we could have the 2-car house, fence, minivan, stay-at-home spouse, potentially, to raise the kids, go on a vacation once a year to Grand Canyon or Times Square or Disney World, and that we could go, and then you have your starter home, and then you upgrade your house, and then you all of these basic things that our grandparents, the great generation, what are they called? The greatest generation?
Greatest.
Yeah, what they were able to have, we were all told we could have that. And then something went wrong. And suddenly, especially after 2008, boomers many of them lost their retirement, so a lot of them are now stuck in apartments, after losing their houses. And then the millennials and Gen Xers and Gen Z are not able to then recreate what the greatest generation was able to create. And we were told all as little children we were going to be able to do this. So that's the angst. So some of us are able to go and maybe have money, make money, do that. But the problem is that it's not at the same level or scale that was able to do that before.
I think the problem is college. I think college is the main problem. And looking at Antifa, I'll just give a shout out to this viral post from Reddit. It was from r/cringe. So this is like a prominent subreddit. It's like a very viral video. And it's this young woman who looks, typical kind of attractive. She's doing the normal things, wearing makeup. Her hair is, looking good. And then it's like first year of college and her head's shaved. And it's like her hair is just like straggly and pink. And she's like screaming and shrieking at the camera like, whoa, what happened to you? They go to college
Berkeley.
and they enter these weird environments. And it's like this person was angry and they didn't even graduate. What happened where she's in high school and she's like your typical high school, girl. And then she goes to college and in her first year, she becomes this. So like, I definitely see what you're saying. I think we can expand upon like angst and the denial of what we were promised and things like that. But what's this thing? Like you go to college in 1 year and then all of a sudden they're Antifa and they're dressing like crazy people.
I don't think that's most college experience. I think that's very specific to like certain universities that take on that vibe, like Berkeley is one, or, I don't know, maybe Yale, I guess. I don't know. I don't really pay much attention to that. But, when I went to college, I went to UC. I went to 7 different schools, to be honest with you. And then I finally ended up at UC Davis, which was my final school. And there, everybody's nose to the grindstone just working. And everybody's, that's all they're doing. They're just studying. So I do think that there is some of that radicalization that happens, but I don't know if that's where that becomes a real problem is they dominate the conversation.
Right.
So what we're getting is this real wokeism, that everybody's a racist bigot now.
Yeah, you're double white.
I'm double white.
I'm double white, but you're more double white than I am because
So I'm a little more Asian, so that makes me more
more white.
Right, more
somehow.
White. Yeah, I'm not allowed to talk race topics. I've found.
The people who the people who are storming these banks and fighting at these federal courthouses, it's not the majority of people. It is those who are getting radicalized.
Right.
Because there are certainly a lot of people look, you have student loan debt. You're upset about it. You're not going around smashing windows.
I might start.
Don't smash my windows.
Don't do it.
Pay my
Starting
loans
right
off.
here.
Smash. I apparently the stuff works. You get violent, you freak people out, and they get on their knees and say, please stop, please don't hurt me. And then,
I don't know if it does, because I think when the other side, when there's, depends on who does it, right? After January 6th, it seems like that's not exactly what happened.
Oh yeah, I think
So
it's fair. I
depends.
think it's fair to criticize to that extent that it was like the Capitol building during the joint session of Congress to count the electoral votes. So that holds a lot of weight with why it was particularly egregious. But I'm like, they've stormed, the far left has stormed local state buildings, like Capitol buildings, local courthouses. They've literally stormed the congressional buildings on more than one occasion. They were banging on the door and smashing it during the Kavanaugh hearing. So it's like,
I think it's worse to go after the average person. Take your angst out on the right people.
Yeah.
At least these Antifa people, I'll give them credit. They didn't go after the mom and pop shops. They went after the actual institutions they're angry
they
at.
went after mom and pop shops.
On this occasion.
Oh,
the one you're
this
talking
one,
about?
this one. Right. They
So
went
in
to the
this,
banks.
right, this one, finally, they went and did it to the right people. Because before they were going into my neighborhood. They came to my house. They came
Wow.
during the summer. We had armed invaders in our complex, and we
Whoa.
were all told to go into lockdown, not COVID lockdown, but an actual lockdown. We had helicopters swarming above, and we had armed. Do
you want to say what city you live in?
I live in LA.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
so-
people went into your complex, or whatever?
Yeah, what happened was there was like a group of armed rioters, looters or whatever, and they had looted a place, a business, and then they got in their getaway car and drove off, and the cops were chasing after them, and they drove into my complex, of all
Whoa.
places, and they got out of their car, and they got into our building, and they were hiding in our building with
It's-
guns.
It's a good thing you guys are armed and you have excellent gun laws.
Funny thing. So I'm from Idaho, and I've always been, even though I've always identified as a liberal and more of a Democrat, even though now not, but the one thing that I never really agreed with others on my side of the aisle were about guns. I'm a big pro-Second Amendment person. I'm from Idaho. I don't know, maybe, I'm sure there's anti-Second Amendment people in Idaho, so I shouldn't generalize. But after that, I will say everybody in my complex, I live in a very liberal area of LA as well. and everybody was always been anti-gun. And after that, at the dog park, I'd go to the dog park with my dog, and I'd overhear the conversations. And people would say, I never thought about owning a gun.
There it
but
is.
now I'm thinking about buying a gun. Yeah, it really shakes you. And I always tell
Me
people.
too.
But yeah, I mean, look at what's happened in the cities. I mean, we were locking down. People were coming to our house. We had my neighborhood was totally destroyed by the looters. And they were my uncle's businesses. I mean, my aunt's business got totally, she had to board it up.
Wow.
Immigrant, and by the way, refugee, immigrants with businesses that have been able to work hard and have the American dream in a way and had to board up their businesses. And now I don't know if their businesses will survive.
There is a cultural practice among my people when these riots happen. They get on top of the roofs of their stores.
They get high.
And it's a weird thing to bring up because I know there's Count Dankula was talking about roof Koreans for a long time.
Oh, man.
And I'm I wonder if the woke people are going to feign outrage over that. Because I think the LA riots had a lot of problems and we can be critical of it. But am I allowed to joke about roof Koreans, taking their guns and getting on the rooftops to defend their families and their businesses? Or am I going to get in trouble?
Yeah, you're a racist now.
As long as you make
But
the
I
enemies.
am Korean.
No, you're a racist, Tim.
As long as you make the
Obviously.
enemies zombies, then yeah, maybe
it's all
Koreans
okay.
have better aim.
It
Is that
reminds me-
racist?
It reminds me of that Rick and Morty, the first episode where he's like, shoot him, Morty, and he's like, I don't want to kill him. He's like, they're robots, and then he shoots one of them, and the guy's like, oh, my leg. And I meant figuratively, they're bureaucrats, Morty. They work for the government. Yeah, that was funny.
I don't think we're allowed to make that joke.
Yeah, it's a
Well, Rick
might
and
be a little
Morty
too
did.
much. Yeah.
Now, I remember when everything started getting crazy during COVID and the lines were out the door, and it was all of a sudden run-of-the-mill liberals were trying to buy guns, and the funniest thing about it was how many of them realized it wasn't easy. They're like, oh
Yeah,
no,
especially
I can't buy
in
this.
California.
Yeah, I hear it's nigh impossible.
Yeah.
To buy a gun in California.
What's the process?
I hadn't tried because I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it. But I know that for one, the stores many of them were closed, or I think you have to apply. But what many of us do is we consider going to my home state of Idaho or Nevada, and the process is a lot easier. And
then you're able to
yeah.
bring it back to California?
Oh, sure. You just have to register the weapon once you get to California.
Oh, interesting. A lot of states do operate like that. If you already have it or if you bought it somewhere else legally, then they don't care if you have it.
Yeah.
So it is weird. And in that capacity, there are a lot of people who are staunchly absolutist. And I have to say, from a legal perspective, I don't see a way around this argument. We talk about Michael Malice too much. Michael, we talk
I
about
love
you
that
too
guy,
much.
Mike.
He's
I
just
need
got
to look this
Come here,
guy
you.
up.
Yeah,
I
you
don't know.
gotta
You
look
guys
him up.
have
Well,
a real
because-
bromance going.
It's funny.
It's true.
No,
Very smart.
it's because he's a smart guy, and he made
Yeah.
a really good point. He said that the Constitution says I have a right to keep and bear arms, but every single cop in New York City would arrest me if I had a gun. And I'm like, the Constitution is the law of the land. It says that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It doesn't say if you're mentally ill, you can't have a weapon. It doesn't say if you're a felon, you can't have a weapon. It literally is just verbatim, you can have a weapon.
Yeah, I get because it's the open carry or it's the concealed carry or open carry laws, right? So I guess
So all of a sudden now there's look, New Jersey, you can't. You absolutely.
well, you can own the weapon,
but you can't go anywhere with it. You can't bear it.
Well, and that's right. So that's the big question: is what does bear mean? Does it? Yeah, but I would think that bearing arms. I guess we'd have to look back at what did they mean by the word bearing. Bear arms back then.
It meant
Bear
bear
means
arms.
show it.
You can kill a bear.
Like a
and
wild
that's
yeah,
awesome.
animal.
steal their arms. Yeah.
I think it's if you're bare naked, that means it's obvious. Everyone
Yeah.
can see it.
Bearing
if you're
arms-
burying your teeth, that means you're showing your teeth. So
It's different
bearing
spelling,
arms would be
yeah.
like open carry, basically.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we think today in 2021 with that word. But I'd be curious to know what their definition of it was in 17.
You can look at a lot of the quotes from the founding fathers and the Federalist Papers and things like that, and they're pretty much everybody should have guns all the time.
Right.
People
yeah.
had artillery. They had private artillery at their homes. There's a funny meme about some. The people. A lot of people on the left like to say, the founding fathers didn't expect someone to have a semi-automatic, whatever AR-15 assault weapon or something, which assault weapon is meaningless, by the way. But and then there's this funny meme where it's someone breaks into a guy's house and he pulls out his musket and fires. It goes across the street and hits a dog, ripping a hole in it because it's smoothbore. He runs upstairs and screams, "Tally ho, lads!" and then fires 2 massive artillery cannons. No. People this back in the day, they had private warships.
Oh, yeah.
You could literally own your own battleship.
That's what I
Well, you
want.
couldn't own a cannon.
You couldn't own a cannon?
No, you couldn't own a cannon. They actually had some believe it or not, and I've researched this extensively because I was always a real 2A extreme. I would say I was an extremist. I maybe just barely converted out of the extremism, but I used to say, if the government can own it, I want to be able to
Heck
own it.
yes.
Right. But then I realized I wouldn't be able to own all the weapons the government has because I don't have enough money. And do I really want the people who are really rich to have the ability?
point.
Right. And then I said, okay, maybe I'm not so extreme after all, because I don't know if I want the rich
Real
nut.
class warfare there.
Right. I don't want them to own the nuke.
Right.
Right.
But
Which
then
they would.
Right. And
Yeah,
then
for sure.
Bill Gates or whoever you want to
Exactly.
write. And then the rest of us can't. Right.
Prevents mercenary warfare in a lot of ways. Government oversight, crazy as it is.
Should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, then I'm less extreme. But
You can own a
researching
cannon
it-
today.
No, you can't. You
can own a
what
mini
kind
one.
Of a cannon? You
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
Maybe what's the definition
I guess
of a cannon?
It depends.
But
But
back
like,
then you couldn't have like an actual cannon. Just like they banned fully automatic rifles after the Valentine's Day massacres.
When was that? Other than Valentine's
20s.
Day? Oh, actually on Valentine's Day.
It was, yeah, I think it was. It was a
was a
mob.
mafia,
Yeah,
yeah,
mob
yeah.
hit, went in and killed like 14 or 15.
I'm
20 people,
thinking
something like that.
maybe because we don't live on the frontier anymore, we don't need the full open bearing arms mentality.
I don't think the cannon thing is accurate. I mean, I did look it up, and there are
Yeah.
people saying you could not, but privateers and corsairs existed. They
Maybe if it was like a well-regulated militia could have a cannon.
no, but a privateer was like it literally means private ship. It's like privateer.
Pirate, yeah.
Yeah, they're not necessarily pirates, but they were responsible for a lot of the piracy, because what would happen is with the UK with the English crown, for instance, they would issue letters of marque to a private warship or a private ship that had military capabilities, and then the letter of marque was basically like, if you screw with our enemies, then you're all good. And then what would happen is France would be like, they would go to the Britain and be like, your citizens are pirates and you're signing letters of marque, and then the crown would be like, oh heavens, they're criminals, we had nothing to do with this. So it was like mercenary warfare essentially, but people had them. And
Well, maybe it's only specific cases you could have the cannon. Like if you had a ship,
maybe
that was
Makes
it. But
sense,
you
yeah.
couldn't have one in your backyard or on your farm.
I know today that like Luke recently sent me I guess it was like an artillery Gatling gun of some sort. With like, it's got two wheels and it's this massive thing.
He
and
sent you a Tommy gun? You're not allowed to have that.
Well, not full auto, but you can have a Tommy gun, yeah. But there's Gatling guns are legal. Gatling gun's totally legal. So each crank is a trigger pull, so you're allowed to go.
Oh.
And so he's like showing me this like rotating 9mm or whatever with these huge magazines. He's like, I think you should get this, and I'm like, bro, I don't think I need. I don't think I
really?
need that.
Yeah,
I don't know,
why
it would be
not?
interesting.
You never know.
Put 'em in a
No,
museum.
yeah.
Stephen Crowder did like a big thing about this, about what the founding fathers thought and expected when it came to weapons and what were available at the time. And I guess a lot of people, these liberals who, interestingly now, are the ones who are very much so buying a lot of these weapons, that there were very serious technological advancements in terms of firearms back in the day. They just weren't common. So while people were using like flintlock pistols and muskets and stuff, I think there was one, like he showed, where it's got like 16 barrels and they were each loaded, and you could like fire them all rapid succession, and those were legal and allowed. It's just it was easier and cheaper to have the standard, single shot or whatever. So I guess it is an interesting argument about what they actually thought, but as far as I can tell, maybe by today's standards, the founding fathers would look and be like, oh heavens, people have like
Why
Gatling
didn't they
guns.
change this yet?
But hold on. That would apply to everything else too. Like, okay, well then you don't have free speech on social media. You're not allowed to use telephones, because like the idea that you aren't allowed to have your First Amendment rights, your right to worship, because technology changed, well beyond what they expected to happen. Communications over the internet is not guaranteed. And I guess they're arguing that to a certain extent. But technology changes, but our rights change with them. So a better example is probably the Fourth Amendment. Metadata. If you have private information you do not expect people to see, then it is a violation of your rights to illegally search or seize your private information. There was no such thing as metadata back then, but we still, I think, for the most part, agree the NSA is bad. Spying on us and stealing our data is a violation of our right to be free from this intrusion. And so when it comes down to the Constitution, I actually think there are some things that we don't want even the state to use against its people or the people to have, because weapons are becoming extremely powerful, particularly directed energy weapons. Cat's out of the bag, though. There's 2 big points. The Constitution is there. And just because I might not agree with it, I don't feel like I have the right to take.
You do. You have the right to amend it.
I have the right to express my opinion like I'm doing now. But I don't believe that these politicians who are passing these laws have a right to do that unless they amend the Constitution. So by all means, we can have a conversation. But if you don't get that 2/3 majority, then it should not be done.
Question is, should we amend it?
At this point, it doesn't matter.
What do you mean?
3D printed guns.
Like there's no stopping. But should we have the right to bear arms?
Yes.
Should everyone have the explicit right to walk around with the open carry weapon?
Yep.
Even in a city where you're
Yep.
packed together and it's like
Yes.
20, 30 people sitting on a bus and everyone's got a handgun?
Yep.
Very polite.
Maybe
think
not
so?
a handgun.
Oh yeah, I think so.
You think so?
Everything, anything.
I
think you can have like
Really?
What
What about if a little kid had one? What,
Yep.
what about if a kid reached over and grabbed your gun or something?
No, that's theft.
But it was a kid. It didn't know any better. What would you
What?
do? What if like someone's 4-year-old reached over and tried to grab your gun?
Then take better care of your gun and make
Just
sure
out of
you
your
have a-
holster. Just reached
Make
over
sure
and
your
grabbed your
safety's on.
holster.
Then get
Yeah,
up.
make sure you're
Then-
safe.
then-
What would you
then-
do? Would you shoot a kid? Like, what do you
No,
do?
no. Wait.
What would some crazy person
You
do?
would
Get
grab
away
the
from my
kid's
gun?
arm. It's a 4-year-old, and you
What
just
if it's
take
like an
the gun.
11-year-old?
Then you grab. You can't overpower an 11-year-old, Ian.
Of course
let
you
me
could,
get to the
but, like,
point.
I'm just saying.
Maybe some
You're
people
getting
can't,
away
like
There's
from
a
the
reasons
point.
why you don't dangle
Listen,
candy in
I'm
front
not
of every
saying
kid.
I like the idea. I'm saying so long as the Constitution says you have the right to keep and bear arms, I can't tell someone they can't do it.
I know, but should we change the Constitution was my question. Like,
Do you think there should be training for guns? You know, this is like one, maybe a lot saying, okay, you can.
Yes, absolutely.
You can, but what about if we said, okay, you can bear it publicly as long as you've passed training courses?
I don't like that idea.
Why not?
I guess the challenge is so long as the Constitution has it verbatim in there, I feel like it would be an authoritarian violation of other people's rights to supersede the supreme law of this land. That includes all of the amendments as well. Like 5th Amendment, 4th Amendment, 3rd. I don't think we have to worry about the 3rd Amendment because troops aren't going to be coming to our houses, but, whatever.
You don't know that. I mean, look what they're doing.
I know, for real.
I mean,
3rd Amendment
you never know.
might become important. I used to actually think more along the lines of there's probably reasonable restrictions we can put in place. And, much like the First Amendment, I think there are some reasonable interpretations. Don't commit a crime. So with the First Amendment, we have a right to free speech, freedom of assembly, religion, the press, and a redress of grievances. And those are all fairly straightforward, and we know what they can do and what we can do. And if someone commits a crime by instructing or inciting violence, that is not protected. In fact, it says peaceably assemble. And so that I understand. That's not, in my opinion, a restriction on the First Amendment, which says speech and reason and peaceably assemble if you are committing a crime. There is a challenge because laws can be changed and other things can become crimes. They can say, okay, one of the arguments we have to be careful of, and this is why I'm still very much more absolute on free speech issues, not completely though, is they'll say, all right, if committing a crime is the threshold by which you don't have the right to say something, like telling someone to go commit harm or murder somebody,
Charles Manson.
then what if they pass a law saying hate speech is a crime, and now they can say, okay, well, now that offending someone is a crime, you can't cross the threshold of committing a crime. So it's very difficult. And that's why the Constitution exists for an important reason. The Founding Fathers were very concerned about tyranny. More so, the Bill of Rights was the anti-federalists who were concerned that centralization of federal authority would cause another situation like they had with the Crown. So we got these guaranteed rights. If you want them to change, we have an amendment process for this. So as much as I might be like, in Chicago, we got gun problems. In New York, when we were talking with Luke about this, it was interesting because I said, bro, if you're in a cubicle apartment stacked on top of a bunch of concrete shoeboxes smelling like sour milk, and someone breaks in and you've got, like a .308 rifle, you're going to go through the walls. You might hit somebody. That's really bad. And Luke's instinctive reaction was maybe we ban, maybe we don't allow certain calibers. I was like, oh, there it is. It's exactly the logic people use, and I totally understand it. If you're in New York and someone tries robbing you and you pull out your gun, you can cause a lot of collateral damage because you'll probably miss. People don't realize even people who are good at shooting might be in an intense situation. They panic, they miss, they hit something, they hit somebody else. So naturally, people in big cities say, we want gun control laws. My problem is, okay, but you need to amend the Constitution. We can't just say the Constitution is meaningless because either it matters or it doesn't. And I do not believe that I have the authority, or any politician does, to be like, Constitution doesn't matter.
I guess that's why why the Constitution says anyone can do it, and then it's like a state by state or locality by locality thing, because you don't want to ban the open right to carry in rural Idaho when just because in New York City is people are too close together.
Yeah, but we don't do that with free speech. We don't say, well, it's based on which city you live in. So, you should have the right to say what you want to say if you're in rural Idaho, but not if you're in New York City. I mean, so on that point, we don't have it municipality by municipality. We do it, it's a blanket free speech.
Maybe the issue is just, listen, you're responsible for whatever comes at the end of that barrel. And if you live in New York and you own a gun and you have it on you and you use it, and whatever it hits, you're responsible for. The same is true for anywhere you live.
Yeah, but if I'm dead, I'm not going to care how responsible you were held to whatever it was, right? Like at that point, I've already been victimized, or I've already had to take the bullet, literally. And you maybe get punished, but what does that do to help me? And I think that's why, they make these laws, because they're trying to prevent from me ever having that situation. It's not about you won't get punished. It's about I won't be victimized.
It's an ethical conundrum, to say the least. And man, we just really love making sure everybody knows who Michael Malice is.
Yeah.
I hope you talk about me as well, as much as you talk about him when I'm
tell
gone.
you, he's just got these really good points.
His
and I
beautiful
mean
eyes. That's what it is.
I'm going to be listening every day, and if I don't hear my name at least 3 times a show,
He said,
Wow.
my rights are not up to a vote. And I'm like, man, he's got
But
a
they
good
are,
point.
aren't they? You can vote to amend the Constitution and change people's rights.
So the issue is, yes, but I think the simple way to look at it is, so long as the Constitution guarantees your right to bear arms, to keep them, then it needs to be all the states coming together and changing that, and not some Rep. Kinzinger in Illinois being like, I think we should have expanded background checks banning the private sale of firearms.
So do you agree with banning certain weapons or all weapons from those who've committed?
Absolutely not.
So even those who've committed violent crime with weapons, and then they get out of jail,
They pay their debt to society.
and so you think they should be allowed to own a weapon again?
Yes.
Even those who committed violent crime with a gun?
They're out of prison,
Yeah.
so they pay their debt to society.
Well, maybe.
They should be allowed to vote. They should be
Yeah, I agree.
and
I
they should be
agree
allowed,
that
they should get all of their rights reinstated upon
all of them,
completion.
including, wow.
The right to bear arms.
I don't know. I hadn't
Absolutely.
thought about that. I mean, I definitely think felons who've paid their price and have come out should have the right restored to vote and bear arms. But
And travel, everything.
yeah,
I-
everything except I don't know about whether or not, domestic violence, especially guys that have committed acts of domestic violence, they go in, they come out, and they serve very little time. And then, so not everybody does pay a what I would consider a reasonable debt to society.
It is better that 10 guilty persons escape than 1 innocent person suffer. I will take the liberty-based view that we must protect the rights of the individual and those who have done right by our system and our rules over fear that there may be a risk. Like we mentioned this the other day, I think it was Otto von Bismarck or whatever, who said it is better that 10 innocent people suffer than 1 guilty person escape.
Somebody who's suicidal, what do you think? Should they have the right to bear arms?
Yes.
Even if you know.
I'm in favor of assisted suicide.
Yeah, but this is different than assisted suicide. This is somebody who's, down. They're feeling very down. They're not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, right? They're feeling, and this is something that could be corrected, fixed, but not if they have a shotgun.
Not if they have a butter knife.
But I agree with you on physician-assisted suicide for sure. That has to happen.
You see the Dark Knight, the old Batman movie?
Yeah.
Joker made a pencil disappear. You know that scene? It's
No.
a very brutal scene where he
Yeah.
goes into the mobsters and they're like, "What do you want?" He's like, "I'm going to show you. I'm doing a magic trick," and he slams the
right.
pencil. I'm going to make it disappear, and then he
right.
slams the guy's head into it. The pencil's gone. The reason I bring that up is like, if somebody is determined to cause themselves harm and end their life, what they need is help. And one of the reasons I'm in favor of assisted suicide is not because I'm like, yes, someone should just help them die. It's because they'll talk to somebody first. They'll go through a process to make sure it's actually something that should happen. And oftentimes, a lot of people might have a chronic disease or like cluster headaches where their life is just pure psychotic misery and agony, and they're desperate. Nothing will relieve their pain. Oftentimes, they're going through a period of depression, and it'll help them go through therapy as opposed to taking action on their own. The gun argument for suicide overlooks the fact that people will get drunk and then sink into a bathtub, or they'll take pills and then sink into a bathtub. drop a toaster in the bathtub, and a bunch of other really awful things.
Well, I don't know. I think, for a lot of people, they maybe want to end their life, but they want to do it quick and easy, and they can't fathom doing it in some, drawn out way that's going to cause a lot more pain or harm. They want something quick. That is the number one. Right, it does. And it is the number one, when people talk about all the gun violence, right? Whenever they're mentioning all the gun violence, all these things, it's mostly suicide.
That's true.
And so that's, so maybe there should be some sort of provision where it is like a 7-year, that's what California does, 7 years. You can't own a weapon
if
after.
You've ever been suicidal or an attempt.
Right, for 7 years.
I think that's way too long. Way too long.
Yeah, it might be long. Yeah, that might be a bit
Prison's
long.
intense, though. The way our prison structure is it makes people radicalized.
Oh, absolutely.
For the most part. So a violent gun offender goes in there, comes out. It's a good chance that he or she is crazier than they were when they went in. So
the main issue with the suicide thing is, I'll put it this way: I would absolutely love it if there was a way to reasonably have someone who was suicidal not have access to a gun or something they could use to end their life. One of the reasons I'm in favor of assisted suicide is that we want to encourage as many people to go to a doctor and for therapy to talk about why they feel this way and determine if it actually is something they need. Most people.
So you mean you're for physician-assisted suicide even if the person's healthy and they want to end their life?
No. I'm saying it would encourage people who are suicidal to go to a doctor, and then the doctor would be like, no. You know what I mean?
I don't know unless they were led to believe that was an option. Like if I can go to my doctor and I could tell him I'm suicidal, I don't want to do this anymore, help me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's different than like...
Well, so there would be criteria, but I do believe there are a lot of people who would be like, my life sucks, I'm miserable, and I think I might qualify. They'll go to a doctor. Whatever we can do...
They'd have to be crazy and suicidal, I think.
I think it may not be a perfect solution, but whatever we can do to encourage people who are suffering to go to a doctor in any capacity.
Right.
So I would love it if we could be like, okay, But
they can't if they're dead because they've shot themselves because we let them have a gun.
Then how do you take away their gun before they were suicidal? Before you knew they were suicidal?
Well, you didn't, right? So they had the option at that point, and so we're not it's definitely not going to cure the problem, right?
How do you know they're suicidal?
Well, because people usually reach out at some point prior to that point. I mean, most people don't really want to end their life, and so they go through a process of reaching out before they get to that point. So people around them know, and then they can say, we're going to take the weapon.
But you're talking just if they've attempted suicide.
No, or they've reached out and said, I'm not, because they go through a process prior to even hitting that point usually.
There was a story, I think this was in Maryland, I'm not sure, it might have been Baltimore area, where there was a guy, he was in his 60s, and I could be getting some of the details wrong, but the gist of it was someone in his life, an ex or a family member, was feuding with him, told the police that he was unstable and unwell and armed, and so they served a red flag warrant. The police showed up to his house, and he had no idea why they were there. They knock on the door, and he answers the door, and he's got his gun, which he's legally allowed to do. And they said, we are taking your gun. And he doesn't know why. And he said, the hell you are, and he fought with them, and they shot and killed him. The problem with trying to seize someone's weapons because we think they might be suicidal is that we create conflicts where someone with a gun is now going to be engaging with police. We don't want the conflict. Right. So it is tough. I'm not saying if there's someone who's like deranged and mentally unwell and they've got a gun, we definitely want to prevent them from going on, a killing spree or doing something really atrocious with that weapon. And figuring out the right way to go about doing that is difficult because red flag laws end up creating very dangerous circumstances and may actually end up backfiring like they did in this circumstance. And there's probably a bunch of other stories that are similar to it.
This actually happened in Colorado. This happened to someone that I'm tertiarily connected to. He was a lawyer. He knew his rights. He was former military. He was armed. They served a red flag on him, and it ended in his death because he barricaded himself in there, and there was no getting him out without.
I mean, you gotta think about this too. If these people really are unstable, then you're gonna send in police to be like, now give us your guns when they're already unstable.
Right. Then that's gonna be a great way for them to commit suicide right then and there. Right.
There is logic here, right? Especially there is logic here. We want to make sure these crazy psychopaths don't have access to these weapons, and they can't do these things. But I don't know how you do that. I really, really don't. Criminals get guns, and there are easy ways to get guns, no matter what we do. When they ban things, people just find a way, and more importantly, 3D printed guns. Yeah. You can get a 3D printer for a couple $100, and you can easily print what was the one we've been talking about right now? The first one,
the ghost gun. That first one,
the first one.
I think it's called the Liberator.
The Liberator.
But don't you only get one shot with those?
Yeah, the original ones.
About one, but they've improved it, and now apparently there's some like better designs that can withstand and actually get a few rounds, you could easily 3D print something.
FGC.
No, not until
FGC.
they're going
gun
to
control.
They're going to change the tech on the printers to prevent them from being able to print a gun.
And the way they do that is
No.
by trying to hide the information or make the information illegal,
It won't work.
which is why the social networking censoring thing is so desperate.
You can't do it.
I mean, the CAD files
There's
are on
no
the
way
dark
you think
web.
to
It's
program
unstoppable.
it.
Absolutely not.
Not even just about the
They might be able to put backdoors in the
Right, that's
machines,
what I
but
mean,
you
in
can
the
build
actual
your
machine.
own 3D printers too. I don't know. I doubt that anyone could ever have total control. of that.
Every time a new iPhone update comes out, some like 17-year-old kid figures out how to break Apple security.
Right, yeah.
And then you can install whatever you want. So I think more importantly is like my ideal version of a world is people have a reasonable armament. People who are mentally ill or suicidal aren't armed. We have restrictions to make sure that the people who have weapons are intelligent, well-trained, well-informed. The first problem I encounter is the Constitution. It doesn't say what the qualifications are. It just says that people have a right to do it, and we need to have an amendment if we want that to be considered. And then beyond that is, how do you actually implement any of these controls without actually just infringing on the rights of those who are intelligent, well-meaning, lawful citizens? Because I grew up in Chicago where guns were like, they're basically illegal, and every criminal has one. Like it was a high school fight. I was 14, a couple blocks from my house, and some 15-year-old kid had a gun. Mm-hmm. They can just get it so easily. And so all that really ends up happening is that no one anywhere nearby had any means of protecting themselves from this person who had a gun. And so you get a lot of murders on the South Side, and there's nothing anyone can do because they're not legally allowed to defend themselves when they see it. Maybe it wouldn't be a perfect world having a very dense population and everyone being armed, because people might panic and you get a lot more shootings. But what's the alternative? I don't know what that world would look like. I do know the world we have now is in Chicago. There was a friend of mine. He wasn't someone I knew, but it was someone my friends were friends with. Took 2 in the chest because he was sitting in front of the wrong house in his car, and that was it. Someone walked out and had a gun, and they couldn't do anything, and he went pop, pop.
Well, I definitely think, and kind of back to one of my original points, is that we can curb gun violence by creating a happy population. And when people feel like they're happy and they have opportunity and they've got a good life in front of them, they don't turn to violence and crime. We know this. This is why we're seeing an uptick, a major uptick right now in violent crime. Murders, I think, are up 30% in the entire country, over 30, maybe 38%, I think was the last stat I read. And that is because, people without jobs, people without opportunity, people struggling.
And the police have been defunded.
Well,
in many of these cities.
Yeah, on top of it. So I think, but even if they weren't, I think we'd still see the uptick because people are feeling more desperate, and we are all animals at our core. I don't think any of us are better than anybody. We all can revert to that animalistic side of us. And so I think that if we want to curb gun violence, probably one of the better measures, because you look at a country like Switzerland where everybody's got a gun, and they have very little gun violence, but they're all very happy and they're all cared for. They are a happy population. They don't feel like they have to resort to any of that.
I think the main issue is, I'm going to avoid using the principal buzzword because I know it'll trigger the left, but I'll just say we have disparate cultures in this country. And that means, actually,
I didn't get triggered only because I don't know what that means.
So,
Disparate.
Yeah. Don't use fancy words with me, Tim.
So what does multiculturalism mean to you?
Multiculturalism?
Yeah.
Multiple cultures.
And so American culture, how would you define American culture?
Multicultural.
Well, I mean, that seems to be, like, I guess, kind of circular logic or paradoxical.
I don't think, well, in my world, there isn't an American culture. That's like, I think what maybe others would think of as American culture. Like, I think they think of,
Cheeseburgers.
I think they think of like my dad's life, where my dad grew up in Idaho, on a farm with blonde hair, blue eyes, went to church, had pigs or something.
Does your mom believe in free speech?
Yeah, but so that's why, to me, American culture is different, right? Because I'm an American and I was raised here, but my mom is Vietnamese and my mom's side of the family is Vietnamese, and they're very American. I mean, my mom is a big Trump supporter. Ironically, my dad's side of the family, Idahoans, farmers, they were Bernie, total progressive.
Very similar experience. It's very strange. Like the Korean side of my family it's not entirely Trump, but it's
more so.
Interestingly.
Yeah, and my mom's side of the family, these are the refugees that, by the way, went through some of those camps that you have to go through in order to process. They went through the processing centers. And people of color, living in California, and they're the big Trump supporters.
The idea of multiculturalism has two meanings. To the progressives, it means that under this big shared human experience, we all have different ways of living, different clothes, and different ways of speaking. But all of these cultures can exist side by side.
You think so? That's what liberals think? I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No.
Well, you said
Really?
progressive. You said liberal.
Oh.
Well, there's an overlap between the two. I mean,
no,
you don't think progressives feel that way about multiculturalism?
No, I don't think that's what they want. No.
What do you think they mean by it?
Because they cancel all of that. So it's, it's like you're not allowed to be different.
Yeah. Right? No. Well, they segregate it. So it's like a honeycomb of like your culture goes here and ours go here and we don't interact.
I thought
That's
Bernie Sanders was like the penultimate progressive. He's not at all like that.
Yes,
He's
he
so
is.
like loving of all people.
No. He went on stage.
Changed.
Yeah, he went on stage and said white people don't know what it's like to be poor.
Yeah, he changed.
He fell into the identity.
2016 Bernie. So I'm a 2016 Bernie.
That's my love.
2020 Bernie. He turned into AOC. And I think that's actually what he did. He saw her and how popular she was and becoming, and I think he adopted a lot of her rhetoric, and it was a mistake.
Yep.
Same with like Trump. Had he just stuck with his 2016 campaign message, and had Bernie stuck with his 2016 campaign message, both of them, it would have been a very different outcome.
I love this fact check from PolitiFact. Bernie Sanders, when you're white, you don't know what it's like to be poor. And they say, false. And I think it's funny just because, like, it's such a weird thing to say. Like, of course white people know what it's like to be poor. And it's also like, how do you actually prove what white people know? Because you can't read their minds. But we all just know they do know what it's like to be poor. It's a weird thing to fact check. Because it's kind of just like, well, it's common sense. If a white person is poor, they probably know this. Why would Bernie say that on March 6, 2016? He said that.
When
like you're white, you don't know what it's like to be poor.
Global poverty, and he's assuming that most of the white people
I thought it
live
was
in
false.
like Europe, like
It's
France.
false.
He didn't say that.
No, he did say it.
But he's false about it.
They're saying his statement is false.
Oh, that's what. Oh, they're saying his statement is false.
Bernie
not that he
Sanders
didn't.
say this.
Wow.
So he said, quote, when you're white, you don't know what it's like to be living in a ghetto. You don't know what it's like to be poor. You don't know what it's like to be hassled when you walk down the street or you get dragged out of a car, Sanders said. When you're white, you don't know what it's like to be poor. PolitiFact rates this statement as a false statement. I think it's funny because you can't read the minds of white people and assume they know what it's like to be poor, but considering the fact that white poor people are there are more white poor people than any other, demographic, then it's fairly obvious.
Bernie would he got arrested for sitting on civil rights in his early days, but he was co-opted by this progressive mind bug.
Bro, he stopped saying millionaires.
I heard him say it a couple weeks ago.
Well, as soon as he became a millionaire, it was a progressive outlet that mentioned this too. I can't remember which one. They were like, I think it may have been like Axios or something. So not super progressive, or just like kind of mainstream left. They said you can track the moment when Bernie Sanders became a millionaire by when he stopped saying millionaires and billionaires and began only saying billionaires. And then you can actually look at the chart and see it.
In a way, he's right, because it's the billionaire class that's like choosing global policy at Davos.
$999 million heirs.
You don't have a lot of those at Davos. I mean, you might, but most of those people are like multi-billionaire, worth 20 billion, 50 billion.
I was at the World Economic Forum a couple of years ago. A lot of people who are not rich, who are totally on board with everything they're doing and are all about this.
But were you like choosing global policy? Were you
not
invited
me.
into the back rooms? Yeah, those
I was
people
invited
are
to a ski resort to like hang out with some of these
people. They own
people.
like cities, and I mean, maybe millionaires do too.
Not every single person who's invited in has that level of wealth.
Some people are just famous.
But even if you have 500 million, you're still living at the same level as a billionaire in a lot of ways.
And you
like
can
the same
control
lifestyle wise, but it's a very different lifestyle than 10 million.
Right. Oh yeah, and 10 billion. You'd have like 50 companies if you had $10 billion. With 500 million, maybe like 3, 2, 4.
Not necessarily.
But I think they're living a similar lifestyle. How many yachts can you have?
It's I would say not necessarily,
30.
But there's a certain amount of money where you can completely influence politics to an insane degree. But let's go back a little bit, because we're talking a little bit about Bernie, but I do want to mention the multiculturalism thing because we're talking about Switzerland and gun crime and stuff. And the issue is they're extremely culturally homogenous.
I don't know if I hate that argument.
I went to Sweden, and I was told by all of these people on the right that there was a serious crime wave from refugees and migrants. I was told on the left it was not true, that crime was worse among native Swedes and things like that. It turns out the right-wing narrative was particularly exaggerated. I don't think from many of the conservatives it was intentional. I think what happened was there was a crime wave happening in some cities, notably Malmö, and they saw their murder rate spike by like 1,300%. That's shocking, isn't it? This is true.
Right.
Murder in Malmö year over year went up 1,300%. Now, when conservatives heard that, they were like, geez, what is happening in this place? Well, they recently took in a bunch of refugees. That must be the issue. It went from 1 murder to 13 murders. It was the children of refugees and migrants from 20-something years ago, and even maybe the grandchildren. And the crime was gang-related, not refugees from the Middle East. And it was 1 murder to 13 murders. So while it was a massive percentage increase, when you realize, like, okay, that is bad, but their crime is still ridiculously low relative to anybody else. We definitely don't want crime on the rise. But a lot of people in the United States and the UK hear that, and they imagine the cities are burning down, and it's like this massive increase in crime. And then many on the left just like outright denied that it was happening. What I ended up finding out when I went to Sweden was that when they brought in a lot of Somali refugees in the 90s, they put them in enclaves where they had almost no opportunity to integrate with the Swedish economy. It's not about culture. It's not about language. It's about the ability to get a job. And if you can't get a job, you become poor. And if you're poor, you become poverty breeds crime. What ended up happening was I was told by many people in Sweden that these young men in some of these places, Rosengard or whatever, that they're called immigrants by people in Sweden, even though they were born in the country. If they go and visit their relatives in Somalia, they're called Swedes because they have accents and they're not from Somalia. So here they are, people who struggle to find work, who can't find work, and are basically isolated from Swedish culture because of the racism of Sweden. Sweden is one of the most racist places I've ever been to, mind you, absolutely. These people can't get jobs. They turn to lives of crime out of desperation and disdain. They don't view the police as having any authority over them because they don't feel like they're a part of that community because they were raised as being told they were immigrants when they were born in the country. That lack of integration and that separation of their two cultures means they didn't care about the Swedish people, and the Swedish people certainly didn't care about them. They changed the policy recently, this is years ago, mind you, but they changed the policy when I was there so that when new migrants and refugees were coming in, they were strategically placed so that they were absolutely placed into the economy with an opportunity to work and go to school and have jobs, and that seemed to have been helping a lot of the issues. What ended up happening was there's a couple different ways we can experience multiculturalism. But the idea that's being pushed by the left, as you noted, the segregation idea, is going to result in serious crime and violence. And so you'll have people who own guns, and they'll use them against those who are not a part of their community. I think the easiest way to understand it, there's a saying that many activists have: snitches get stitches. I think a lot of people say that. And you're also not supposed to cross the thin blue line, or whatever that saying is. There are many instances where we have seen police officers commit crimes, and then the other cops will lie to protect them. I know this firsthand because there was a guy in New York who was falsely accused of a crime. I happened to have been live streaming and filmed it. And the officer who grabbed the supervisor who grabbed the guy instructed a different cop to lie on her arrest documents about what he did, and she did it no problem. And she went to court and lied under oath, no problem. And then the defense said, here's the footage proving you lied. And they said, officer, you're free to go, have a nice day, case dismissed. And they asked, no one seemed to care that these cops just did this. At the same time, Antifa will go around throwing explosives at people, and left-wing activists in Portland will lie and shield them to protect them. People in certain communities do not rat on their own. They never do, and they tell you not to do it. During Occupy Wall Street, there were several women who were assaulted inside the Zuccotti Park camp. And they explicitly told everyone, don't tell the police it happened, because then the cops will come in and we'll have to deal with them smearing us. So we'll take care of it ourselves. What happened? Those men who were abusing those women in the tents while holding them down and just really awful stuff got away with it because they didn't want to look bad. They didn't want their community to be harmed. They would not turn on people inside the camps. So the issue I see here is that we want integration and we want shared cultures and experiences. But as you noted, the modern progressives are segregating and canceling everybody who do these kinds of things,
Yeah,
like,
you're culturally appropriating if you,
Yep.
try to mix in. But I think that, that's not a homogenous. I don't know if like Switzerland, for example, has a low crime rate because they're homogenous. The reason I have an issue with that argument is because I don't think it has anything to do with homogeny. It has everything to do with what you pointed out really was classism. So it's that they're all in the same class, right? So they're
Right.
economically all having all kinds of opportunity. So in Sweden, had they given the opportunity to those groups, and I don't even think you need to actually integrate them in to give them that opportunity. And the Vietnamese community, which is my community, is a good example of that. Vietnamese people, in some ways, Vietnamese people have largely segregated themselves. They prefer to live together in one community, like little Saigon down in Orange County. They prefer it. They'll commute hours just to go back home and live in their community. So they actually sort of self-segregate. But because they had opportunity and the ability to go and start businesses and the ability to thrive, there's very little crime now. But when I was a kid growing up, how many times was I victim of home burglarizing, home invasion? My grandmother was a home invasion victim where they tied her up and beat her up for like 4 hours. That was going on in my community, in the Vietnamese community, when there was a lack of opportunity. Or I would say not lack of opportunity, because the opportunity was there. It's just that they were still poor.
I think you're right, and I'll amend my statement. I think there are issues where communities don't hold their own accountable, but I do think poverty was the driving force. You know, looking at what was happening in Sweden, it was specifically because the children of these migrants couldn't get work.
Right.
And so you had a poor community that was desperate and also kind of shunned, and that breeds crime. And then the community factor kind of plays a role in this as well. So
how do you feel about universal basic income?
I don't know how I feel about it yet. So I was a big Andrew Yang fan too. I like him and stuff. So I don't want to say no to it, but I'm also not ready to buy into the idea yet.
Do you think that it would help people break the class barrier? And
it's hard to say, right? Or a landlord says, I know now you've gotten $1,000 extra a month, so now I'm going to raise the rent. I mean, so that's kind of when especially in a society that we are in, which is capitalist society, right? If the people know that you have the means and the ability to pay, they will raise the price. This is what the fundamental problem we have with banks is that banks will say, well, this is why student education, I think, has gone through the roof, is because when the government said, especially, we'll do federally backed student loans, then the banks were like, well, then, we'll go ahead and give you a bunch of loans. And then the institutions were like, well, wow, okay, then we'll go ahead and raise the price of tuition because we know you're going to get the loans.
It's a guarantee.
Right, it's guaranteed.
Free money.
They were able to just continue raising and raising and raising. And so that's my one concern with the universal basic income, is that it would create that same sort of, you have federal guaranteed money, and so therefore I know what I can do in response is raise prices.
Yeah,
right.
That's actually a good point a lot of people don't bring up.
Yeah.
There's talk about inflation. If the average working person, their labor is valued less, or it's more expensive now because they already have access to, resources and revenue, then all the prices of everything is going to go up. It's a weird thing that I think a lot of progressives don't seem to understand when it comes to the arguments about minimum wage. I used to be a pretty big proponent of increasing it to a certain extent, slow rolled increase. And then I literally met an accountant for my business. And I asked him, and I talked to a couple different accountants. They were all Democrats, in the blue areas, in the Philly area. And they all basically said the same thing. Yeah, like 30% of my clients lost their business when the minimum wage went up, because you might increase the wages for these people, but that doesn't mean the business has the money to pay them. And if they're operating on a skeleton crew staff already as a small business, all of a sudden their liabilities jump 30%. Employment taxes and wages, because it's all of the employees, but their money in the bank stays the same. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, overnight, they're insolvent, they're gone.
Right.
So it didn't work.
There's and I have mixed feelings too about I'm naturally by default a leftist, so I automatically okay, raise minimum wage, fine, sounds good, everybody's on board. But I think there's another way to do it that's actually more effective and would resolve that problem. And it would be to tie wages to the highest paid person in the organization. And Germany, what they do there is everyone can see what everybody makes in an organization. So at BMW, for example, everybody knows what everybody is making there. Everybody knows where they're at. And they all know how they can get raises. And it's like you could have a janitor at BMW making more money than somebody who's at a different job, but that's because the janitor's been there for 20 years and it's a set system and everybody knows and it's all understood. And so then when you find out somebody's making a certain amount of money, because it's extremely transparent, you don't have any questions of why. You know why they're making the money that they're making. But I think that there's a way to tie, and you know who else does that? Who does transparent wages is Whole Foods. I believe everybody at Whole Foods knows what everybody makes. And there's a couple of other companies that do it. But I think if you tie the wage to a percentage of whatever the top person is making.
I'm going to have to shatter that beautiful dream of yours.
Why?
That's what he does.
So, profit, passive income. It's amazing. You could do something very clever. You could be the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company with $1 million salary and then announce to the world that, you know what? Wealth inequality in this country is wrong. I am lowering my salary to, what did Harvard say? Harvard said you need like $77,000 or whatever to be happy. $80,000. And then I'm going to use that money to give everybody a raise. And then you give your employees a raise and everyone's like, look at this guy who's a bastion of good left libertarianism is really helping. And then you look at your bottom line and you're like, okay, so I took off about $920,000 of my salary, which was taxed at the employment rate, which is 7.5 on my end and 7.5 on the business end. Now that it's passive income, I save 7.5% and make way more money. Congratulations. You found a way to make 70 plus grand while pretending to lower your wage.
If you own the company.
It could also be tied to the revenue of the company. So you could tie it all together. So there could be a system where it's like, okay, like in Japan and in Germany, for example, it's really immoral for CEOs to get paid a certain amount of money.
It's a cultural enforcement, a social enforcement.
Right. That one. Well, yeah.
So here's the issue with tying it to revenue. One of the difficult things too about running a business is when you have to. It's a really weird thing at the end of the year. When, depending on what kind of business you have to pay taxes on the money, but you need that money to operate. And so it's kind of frustrating where it's like, you might have a good month and you're like, this is wonderful. I have enough. That's like a safety net to make sure my company can function. And now I have to give a chunk of that to the government. But it's like all that happened was a day passed. So if one of the hardest things is if you try tying revenue to the highest paid person, what happens if you bring in a good amount of revenue and you want to expand and invest and grow the company and hire more people? Well, you can't now because you made too much. You got to pay everyone a lot more money. Could you then defer it by saying, wait, I'm not going to pay them more money because I'm actually going to hire 10 more people and create 10 more jobs, which lowers it doesn't lower your revenue. It lowers it increases your expenses and lowers your profits. So do you have it be tied to the profit? Well, then someone can I'm giving myself a bonus. I'm going to be giving myself a CD as an executive bonus, which is not income that can be taken today. There's a million and one ways to get around this stuff.
I actually don't think you can get around it with the passive income thing. Now that I'm thinking more about it, if they would make a rule that the owner could not, so you couldn't be the owner. So it would be the highest. So, and
the highest paid employee versus the lowest paid employee.
Right. So the owner is not, and they already do this with the corporations as it is. There's so many, and I know all this sounds really complicated, but as it is, come on, our taxes are so complicated.
Yeah,
we could just make some extra complications to this. It's not that big of a deal. But I think that they could say exempt from owner. There's just like right now with pass-through corporations, they've got certain things where they say, okay, but if you're an owner, then you don't get this tax break. But if you are,
that might work. The highest paid employee versus the lowest paid employee, and shareholders are exempt. The
owners, yeah.
So then basically,
shareholders.
If you have somebody who's like an executive, executive vice president or something, and they're like, I'll only do this job for $1 million a year, and then you're like, okay, well that means we got to pay the lowest paid employee, like $50,000 a year.
Right.
Then that's actually really good for the business owner because you can then say, sorry, I can't give you $1 million. Because then I'd have to pay the mailroom guy $50K a year, and we can't afford that. We've got 1,000 low-level employees that would have to go up substantially if we gave you that much money. So it actually is a great bargaining chip for the business owners to essentially be like, we can keep down. I think that actually could theoretically result in a dramatic split between the classes, because the owners would then have, in effect, a legal coordination to stop paying people more money.
Well, and also it would. Well, for one, it would.
I think that's a bad thing, by the way.
Yeah, I know how you're phrasing it.
But it would
encourage
growth and new employees. Like you'd rather have more employees than paying singular employees.
What I mean is, think about it this way: there are a lot of people who are not business owners who get paid lots and lots of money. Well, if the owner says, "Listen, if I give you that high salary, then it's actually going to increase the total company's costs.
I can't do it.
We can't do it. Sorry.
No, you can do it if you really value that person you want to hire. So if
Right.
you say, listen, this is the best CEO I could get to run my corporation, and now my business is at that level where I need that guy to come in and run this thing, but he's demanding $50 million to be the CEO of my corporation, then I think it's worth the investment. You know, then you calculate this in and you say,
So
we're bringing it in because we're successful. We're able to bring in this guy who's successful. He's only going to make us more successful.
I see what you're saying. I'd imagine if somebody was paying a CEO $50 million, we're talking about like an Amazon tier company where Bezos actually only gets $83,000 a year because, you know, he's a billionaire from stock.
Right.
But if someone brought on a CEO at $50 million, we're talking like probably 50K employees or something, or a decent amount of them probably at the lowest level. So that would mean that you're going to say $50 million a year plus all of these costs, let's say 25,000 people, and we're going to increase, per employee $10,000. Now, is it really feasible to pay all that money? You know,
That's why you'd have to really decide if that person was really, truly worth it. And you'd have to, it couldn't just be your buddy you're trying to give a good job to. It would have to be that person is actually going to bring value to your company. You believe they're going to bring value to your company, and so you think they're worth that entire investment. Otherwise, you tone it down a bit on who you can hire.
25,000 times 10,000. What is that? 250 million? Is that? Am I doing my math wrong?
I don't know, but I mean, we wouldn't
10,000.
I'm supposed
necessarily
to be good at
say.
math.
I should be a wizard.
But we wouldn't
There's all that
necessarily say
weed.
that that's the amount of money,
Right,
right?
right,
I mean,
right.
so you'd set it in a way that it makes sense, and some smart accountants would sit down and actually, hopefully,
Maybe it just gives every hourly employee another 50 cents.
I think it's 2.5
or maybe it
billion.
ends up giving them all 25 bucks an
billion.
hour.
What was the numbers?
25 bucks an hour?
times
Yeah,
10,000?
maybe. Like, who knows what it does, right? But if we said this is the way we're going to do it from now on, and the highest paid employee cannot make all of the money at the company.
I certainly think we have a wealth inequality problem, and I talk about it, every so often. The issue is you end up with the George Soroses and the Bezoses and the Mercers and just really, really wealthy people.
250 million.
250 million. You end up with extremely wealthy people who have all of the power, and then we're supposed to be a government of by and for the people. But let's be real, man. A regular citizen's vote is near meaningless, and we all know it. And I don't mean to discourage people. I mean, your votes are very important. You make sure you go out and vote. What I mean is, relative to the power of a billionaire who can fund, just dump money in the pockets via super PAC or by just, direct donation to every single candidate they want. And, we know that the studies have shown that the public opinion has no impact on policy. It is the donor class, the wealthy individuals who control everything. Mm-hmm. We should not be a country that does that. And I think it's one of the reasons you end up with a Bernie Sanders on the left and a Trump on the right. So I certainly think we need to figure this out. And one of the reasons I've talked about why I support very, very high tax brackets for the ultra wealthy. Well, let me explain, though, because there's some caveats here. The general idea is if you make $100,000 a year, it's pretty good, man. You're doing all right. I mean, COVID has really messed everything up, so it's probably need more than that at this point. But if you're spending, 37% of that in taxes, how much money do you have left over to live? Not enough to live a middle-class life, according to that Harvard business study. So you'd have to make maybe like $150K to clear $80K spending so you can have vacation, a family, and food. Mm-hmm. But what if you make $1 million a year? Now your tax bracket's higher, but you still have hundreds of thousands of dollars left over after your base expenses. Eventually, people using this money can invest, can grow more, and power attracts power, and it's a snowball rolling down a hill where they gain more and more and more wealth. Then at a certain point, you have people who really, what I call it breaking the barrier, reach that point of independent wealth where they no longer have to work, they have so much money. And I don't mean like you can live off the money and retire. I mean quite literally, they can put it in the bank and generate so much interest, they just don't have to work. Mm-hmm. That is a problem because then that massive amount of wealth and power means they can just control whatever they want. They can shut down the opinions of a good working class American. Some middle class family in the middle of the country, a mom and a dad who are working to make ends meet, and they see something on the news and they say, I think I should be allowed to defend my family if a burglar comes and I want the right to bear arms. And then some random dude worth a couple $1 billion just laughs and says, too bad. I, as a single individual, am going to pour so much money into all of the candidates who want to ban guns that your opinion is meaningless. And I'm like, why should that one person supersede those two people simply based on how much money he has? There are certainly issues about free speech and your right to buy commercials and stuff. I like the idea of a progressive tax because the more power you have, the more power you can gain, and a progressive tax slowly starts to chip away at how much you're really gaining. There's a limit, though, to figure that limit out. So I'm not entirely sure. I don't think it's 90% like some people have suggested. Maybe 55, 60% for the highest income earners. I'm talking like over $5 million a year. The main issue as to why milquetoast fence sitter here, I don't think it can be implemented, is it makes no sense to just give that money to the government to go blow up kids in Syria. So we want to curtail the ultra elites from shutting down our rights and shutting down our free speech. Zuckerberg dumped, $300 million into the election. Meanwhile, he's censoring our speech on Facebook and Twitter. I don't like these billionaires having all of that power, but I don't think giving it to the government solves the problem.
Right. I mean, libertarians will tell you why even have taxes. We need to just get rid of taxes.
Well, there are good, a few good reasons for taxes, I think, are to protect our roads and our...
the roads.
We got to protect the road, the transportation.
What is happening here? You guys are supposed to be far right.
I know, right?
What is going on?
No, you need to protect people from mercenaries. So standing army is important. Taxes help fund the standing army.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of... I really like this idea of voucher programs and choice in public services, like schools, maybe even police departments. So we have public school, but everybody pays taxes. The rich will pay, obviously, more simply by virtue of having more money. So like 10% from someone making 10 grand is only 1,000, but 10% from someone making 100 is 10,000. So that means the rich people pay more. But everybody gets back one voucher. Then they choose the school they want to go to, and they use the voucher as a equalized currency for specific services.
But they all get the same voucher.
Exactly.
Okay.
Which means people from poor neighborhoods will all of a sudden have access to the better schools.
Right.
And create an incentive for schools to improve and do better.
Oh.
But then wouldn't that create a system where schools in the better neighborhoods would have to have admission policies? And then they would get to reject certain students, and then you're going to get a lot of racist claims.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe.
big time.
I don't think, it's I'm fairly lukewarm on a lot of the ideas because it might be really utopian to be able to be like, school choice is the solution.
Right.
And it's like you got to do a lot of testing. Maybe there's some pilot programs we can do and try and figure these things out. Maybe there's good evidence to suggest we should at least, go for it in certain areas, see what happens. I think everybody needs to realize no matter what action we take, there will be fallout. We can change. Bernie Sanders, universal health care. I love the idea. I really do. I just don't know how you do it because 20% of our economy is based on the medical infrastructure. That includes insurance companies, administrative, that would be wiped out if we switched the system. Plus, he's in favor of banning private insurance, which is just not a good idea at all. No one does that. Like all the universal healthcare around the world, they don't do this. I don't know why there are Americans who want to do that. That makes no sense. So it sounds great, this idea that we can give this service to someone, but there's so much in between that, like, if we just right now snapped our fingers and said, okay, it's all universal healthcare, then I think there's like 4 million jobs that get wiped out overnight. And even Bernie has talked about this. So how do you do it? I'd love to. Don't know if you can.
But I think those jobs would be recreated. And I think it's not like coal miners to learn to code. Am I allowed to even,
Yeah.
So, So I think it's a different system from, I think that the jobs are equivalent in a lot of ways or similar so that people would then move from the private insurance companies and then they would switch over to working those many jobs that would be created by that system. It'd be a similar job.
So the issue I have there is just, telling Clarence, who's been working this job for, private tech health for 20 years, you're fired. Don't worry. At some point, a new job will emerge and then you'll figure it out.
Well,
In the
that's why I
meantime,
think
good luck.
Bernie said it would be 2 years of pay for them because they believe it would take 2 years to get them retrained and moved into those new jobs.
I think that ignores the human experience. I think people like their jobs. Not everybody. Some
But
people
they would have the same job. It would
Especially
just
not in
be.
insurance.
No, I mean, like, if
Most
it's a
people
2-year
don't like
transition
insurance.
period where, like, all of a sudden their job is gone.
Well, they would go to school. Or they would be training with the new company, a lot of it, right?
I think, Joe Biden said when we shut down Keystone, don't worry, there'll be new green jobs.
Right, yeah.
And that didn't happen.
That's different, though, because those jobs are very different.
So I think, to an extent, yeah, absolutely. I think in the private healthcare industry, there's an overlap, but I still think they're going to be different jobs. You're not going to do the same kind of paperwork for the government you would do for a private corporation. And then we're also telling, 4 million people or whatever that, sorry, your jobs are gone.
You could tell them like in advance, like, hey, Clarence, if you're working private insurance, your job is going to be gone within the next 10 years. So it's up to you. I can't make you drink, but I'm leading you to the water.
I think ultimately, though, we should go back and say, I think Bernie's plan of abolishing private healthcare is nuts. We should absolutely have, if we do a universal system, private as well. Mm-hmm. And that's what every single other country has. So the way I envision it is there's like a base level care. You get the flu, you break a bone, certain ailments that doctors can save you, ready and available. And then you need private supplemental for the much more difficult to treat ailments that are too expensive and might overwhelm the
chronic
system.
healthcare, that'd be cool. Private healthcare for chronic healthcare,
Things
stuff,
like that.
But acute could be all like government controlled.
Exactly. So like if you break your arm, you go to the doctor, they patch you up, have a nice day. I know a lot of them on the left don't like this idea because it means if you get a extremely rare type of cancer,
Yeah, like what if you, or just cancer?
private health insurance.
What about doing it the way England does it?
How do they handle it?
So everybody gets everybody gets public insurance, like a Medicare for all system. But then if you want extra luxuries, like you want a private room at the hospital, you don't want to share,
Then
right? You want 4 days of maternity rather than 2, getting kicked out of the hospital after having a baby,
Then you
things
can
like
pay
that.
for it.
And I think they even have a system where there are some fully private hospitals and doctors.
Then maybe the private hospitals is the right way to go. It still creates a challenge though because you'll end up with still extreme envy and demands.
Don't you think it would be similar to just school? So right now you've got public school. All of us can put our kids into public school, but we also have the option to enrolling them in a fully private school that we have to pay for.
Because the cost of treating chronic health care can get, I think a lot of it's diet related. We have 60% obesity in the United States, I think, and that's by people by their choice to continue to eat crap. So I don't want to fund or saddle people with debt of lazy, ignorant people that want to live in ignorance and poison themselves with food.
I think it's a little harsh.
Food
Ian.
addiction.
I think it's a little harsh.
Food addiction is one of the most dangerous addictions on the planet.
I think you had the sugar industry lie and manipulated people who didn't understand.
And are still doing it.
But
And
what
so
if
to
we-
call them lazy, I think there's a lot of
The people have been used. They've been.
I mean,
they've
Right,
been-
it's like a meth addiction.
It is.
Remember we had Ethan Suplee on the show,
Yeah.
and he said he was trying everything, and he was really just like his entire life trying to figure out how to get it
But
right.
I
and lose
don't
that
want
weight.
to spend money treating the symptoms of the problem if we're not going to treat the problem. We have to fix the problem. Now
Right,
that
but
I'm
if you
into.
had a doctor, but if we had a universal healthcare system and everybody had a doctor, and this doctor is going to service however many people that they've got, and that doctor is now encouraged because of that system to tell everybody to start eating right. And
That'd
that
be it.
doctor says,
So if the
take
doctor's-
vitamin D and eat right.
What
and-
if every morning at 8 a.m., every American was forced to wake up and turn their TV on where a giant face told them to do squats now? One,
No, that
two.
sounds too much like 1984.
Yeah, sounds exactly like
I like
that.
the way the fire department's built. They don't get paid per fire. Like they don't have an incentive to go put out fires. Or I would see firemen starting their own fires to get
Right,
paid
right.
more. The doctors get paid a lot of money for selling things and giving the antibiotics companies want to force hey, we'll pay you to sell our products.
Certain
If we
drugs.
could remove that stuff from the industry and they were actually, we don't want patients. We want you to be healthy. If that was their ethos, then I could see a chronic healthcare
Right,
system.
but the only way that could be incentivized is through the government.
Voucher system.
Oh, I don't know about that. You can just, I think we can enlighten people as private citizens too.
But they're
What
not
if-
going to make money unless the government gets involved and says, we incentivize you to have a healthy population of people. And
What if-
that the healthier they are, we give you bonuses.
What if there was some similar type of voucher system? I don't know how that would work with hospitals, but the general idea is everybody gets equal access to certain services, but there's still a kind of market exchange.
So
Private hospitals,
This might be interesting to you. Oh, sorry. Let me push the right button here. But I actually worked for a hospital. Not the right button. Oh my gosh. There we go. Okay.
That's not the right button either.
The buttons
I'm
in your
gonna push
mind.
all the buttons. There we go. I've never done that before. I was gonna say, I used to work at a hospital, literally in a hospital, and one of the things they did was they would incentivize you to eat right and to weigh the right amount and to have the right cholesterol level. And they would give you a reduction in your health insurance costs. They covered everything. But if you were high, they would help you figure out how to fix it. They would help you eat right, and they would help you figure out if you actually needed medicine. And that was very useful for the people who worked there. It's a big company.
I think we should start our own country. What do you guys think? I think we're solving
Hey,
all the world's problems right
do you-
here.
do you
Have
like
a
Ron-
good one we
do you-
can tweak.
Do you like Ron Paul?
I do like Ron Paul.
Ron
Yeah.
Paul has this quote where he said something like, there's nothing stopping anyone from starting a socialist community or city or town. It's just that socialists want to take from you. And to step back a little bit, I saw that and I'm like, I understand he's going to talk about the socialists and say they're trying to take your stuff. Okay, fine. But there's a good point in that we could literally just buy, 100 acres and then be like, okay, communism, here we go.
We could build a floating island.
So it is an interesting point from Ron Paul that they do just want to keep saying, we get your stuff. But like, how about you go and make your own commune? And there are people who did. It's about 100 people. It is a farm community, and you apply to join. And if they approve you, you work and you bask in all of the glory and everyone's friends, and then people rotate in and out. And it works. They started their own system, which is it's communism. And it works because it's a small group of people who have built their own. And
it's democratic.
Right. And they're within the confines of a well-protected country. So I often say that I'm not personally a right libertarian, but I would prefer if we had to create a government out of anything, it would be more right libertarian because it means I can start my left libertarian society on my own and be left alone because no one's going to mess with me.
Well, because it would be democratic.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas you would also be able to start a community that was purely something opposite of that.
I saw these Bitcoin millionaires or billionaires maybe building new cities. Have you seen these
No,
articles?
what?
Yeah.
Super high tech.
Yeah, the high tech was. There's one that's coming right in Nevada.
Okay.
It's already the plans. I'm pretty sure it's in Nevada. I'm pretty sure.
It's going to be that could be a possibility to like integrate machine learning and artificial intelligence and kind of fix a lot of the
These
shipping.
Bitcoin millionaires have done really wacky stuff. You see that there was one Bitcoin millionaire who tried manipulating the Magic the Gathering market.
No.
So his idea was that if he offered enough money, he could get someone to make a deck. It's a game for those who aren't familiar. He could get a professional player to play in a certain way that was completely unheard of because he was like, I'll just pay you to do it. And then he thought that by having that professional play this in this tournament, using a weird system, it would encourage younger, newer players to do the same thing, which would totally just throw the game into whack. And he dumped like 40 grand into it just because he could.
Wow.
Yeah, these people,
Human
like,
mind.
people who got rich overnight and are just like, I don't know, whatever. Here's
Yeah.
40 grand. I'm a
We
Bitcoin
need to
millionaire.
get those people together and give them some purpose because there's a lot of Bitcoin money out there right now.
They need Elon Musk to like sit down and give him a pep talk. A lot of them are smart people who got rich. Some of these, I've met a couple of Bitcoin millionaires, and some of them are dumb as a box of rocks. So there was like a really funny meme in the early days of Bitcoin, which Bitcoin's at like $58,000 right now, by the way. And it was like when Bitcoin was very new and it was going up in value, but only worth a little bit. There's a meme where someone's like, okay, this Bitcoin thing's interesting. What can I do with it? And then, I don't know, it was someone saying like, I bought a couple Bitcoin because I was interested. It went up and now I have $20. And then there was this really crazy punk rock anarchist looking guy who said that he was like, I'm a billionaire because I knew I could buy drugs on the internet with it. So I bought a bunch. And it was pointing out how like early on, a lot of people who were buying Bitcoin were not like investors or like people running businesses. It was the
Right.
people who were like, ooh, I could use this.
Silk Road dark web stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I know some people who got rich and they're not smart. They don't get it. All they knew was like the government. It's not government, but it's money. And they're like, sign me up.
They
and
didn't
they
even
have
tax
no
it.
idea how it works.
I think it didn't get taxed until 2019 is the
Yep.
first year they started taxing it. That is crazy. People made billions of untaxed. Billions. Individuals, billions. Earlier you said about the healthcare system. I don't like that it to think of it as a for-profit system. I would like a government system that's not for profit.
Right,
So kind of like
right.
the fire department. It's not a for-profit
Right.
system as far as I know. It's
But the
just-
question is, how do you get? You'd have to get the current incentives out, like you mentioned, right? And then the doctors are going to be like, yeah, but now I've got all this student loan debt, and I've got to be able
That's
to pay
another
this
big
back.
problem. That's another piece of the puzzle. Lydia and I talked about this a while ago when we had a fire out back in Philly.
Yeah.
It's the debt. So I don't think doctors need to go to school for 12 years to be able to show that they know how to do the job. If you can learn the information and take the test and show I can do this, then you can do it. So the system that is destroying people with debt, unnecessary, I think, at this point. The knowledge is on YouTube for the most part. The knowledge is on the internet and can be learned very quickly.
Or at least just a medical school that's inexpensive. We don't even have those. We have very few medical schools. We need more medical schools. And the ones that we have are expensive.
So we have to ask ourselves why school costs so much. I'm going to push the right button this time. And it is because the government subsidizes it. I firmly believe that if the government didn't give so much money to schools, because you're right, they will charge what the market will bear. And if the market bears this kind of government subsidy.
I don't know. I mean, schools are underfunded. Not in many areas, like the school that I went to in Chicago. It's like
colleges,
no, not but
though.
yeah, but college.
Oh, colleges.
Colleges for
Yeah,
profit.
right, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a racket.
I'd
Yeah,
be into
it's
it.
total racket.
If you could do like a 2-year medical program and then take a bunch of tests and show like in person, like, yes, I can do the surgery on the thing.
Well,
I know all
let's-
the parts. Make them a doctor.
But let's get to the important part here. What do you need college for? You want to be a doctor?
Good point.
Yes.
Okay,
STEM.
good.
STEM.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Well, if you
not
can
even
do
STEM.
it,
Not
you
even
don't really
STEM.
need to go to
You want to be a doctor? You want to be a lawyer? Congratulations. Or you want to work in academia? Like,
Right.
okay, If you want to be a scientist or a researcher, you do that at universities with grants, but you don't even really have to. You can do private research.
Same with lawyers.
What do
now.
you need college for?
You don't anymore.
What do you need high school for?
Well, you don't
Socialization,
necessarily
but
need
even then.
college in the institution that you're thinking of college, but you do need higher education. So you would need education
Or
somehow. Oh, if you're going to be an engineer, right, you need to learn how to be an engineer.
But
Otherwise,
you can do that on your own.
I mean, how many people are disciplined enough to really learn? And then how do you know that they're getting quality
You have to take a
education
test, maybe.
information?
But you think
and-
you need a teacher? Is this? It goes
Well,
back
hold
to
on.
like
I think you need,
apprenticeship.
yes,
and
I think
Why?
you need a
But-
teacher.
well, a
So-
good teacher or a good mentor can really
Are you-
rocket fuel your
Right,
your
so
Are you,
what
trajectory.
I'm
are you
saying
familiar
is-
with hackerspaces?
Yeah, but all I'm saying is that so you don't like the institution of university, fine, but you still have to have higher education somehow.
Sure, but I mean, we have the internet.
Yeah, but you've got to filter the quality of the information the person's going to get, right? I guess through taking the test, but then you're going to get a bunch of like Trump universities.
Things that require certification and tests, like being a doctor, you have to have college. There's got to be some regulation to that because you're literally working on people. As for engineering,
You're building buildings and bridges and roads. You have to have. There's got to be some regulation on that too.
yeah, but it's the filter there is government regulation and the corporations that are doing that work. So if someone hired, like when I hire like a carpenter to build something, I have no idea what their qualifications are. I don't ask for their degree.
But part of
And
education.
I got to be honest, like a lot of the stuff I get built doesn't come from somebody with a degree.
Right, right. Yeah, but part of the education experience is the peer groups and learning from those peer groups and being able to bounce things off of and the competition within those peer groups.
And those exist outside of universities.
They don't exist as well, I don't think. And I think the competition.
You're right. I think they're better.
You're kind of paying for a mentorship, and they call it teachers now, and they stick 30 of you in a room. Back in the day, it was you and the mentor, and the mentor would give you, this is how you do it. Show
But that was
me
also
now
how
you
many
do
people
it.
back
You're doing
then.
good.
I'll tell
Now
you.
we
Yeah,
have
Look,
8
right.
billion people.
So we're trying to.
I had a friend who was going to college for music business,
Right.
and I asked her, like, so you've been in college for 3 years. What do you do? She's like, well, I'm in school. And I was like, I no, but you're taking music business, right? So you like organize stuff? Have you like worked with like record labels? No, I'm in school. And I was like, okay, I'm a high school dropout and I've already organized some massive shows that brought in tens of thousands of people. How do I have more experience in music business than you do? And you've been going for 3 years and dumping $30-something thousand a year into this.
Right. Some jobs don't require it, right? Like even the industry I got into, radio, when I graduated from college, I went into terrestrial radio, did FM radio for years, right? I didn't need a college degree to do FM radio, but the way I even got into FM radio was through college radio.
Did you do college? You did your
Right,
college
I did
radio
college
station?
radio, right, and then I did an internship at a terrestrial radio station through college, and that's how I got into the industry. From that point, no one has ever asked me about my college degree since I've had my career, but at least it got me in there. But I also think that for other fields in particular, is that the competition inside of the universities, when you are competing, like my last university, we were graded on a curve. So you're graded against, you can't get an A unless you are the best student in that class. It's not about you just passed the test and got the information right. You got to show some level of like genius.
How does a curve work exactly?
Well, I wanted to bring up a point of college. So there's somebody I knew a long time ago, and they had gotten a job with a web dev firm. They were like 19 at the time. And I was really surprised. I was like, wow, you got hired at this web development company and you're only like 19. And he was like, yeah. And he said, what happened was fairly easy to understand. All of the college grads who went to the company said, I have student loans to pay back. I absolutely have to make, this salary, $35 a year or whatever. And then the company said, we don't have $35 a year. Like, we don't make that much money. We have, we're all making, table scraps. And along comes this 19-year-old who's a high school dropout who has a portfolio of all this web development. And they're like, this is a great portfolio. And what coding languages do you know? And he was like, here's my resume. How much do you want? And he was like, how much can you offer? And they were like, 27. And mind you, this is 15 years ago. And he was like, wow, not 27? That's amazing. And they were like, you're hired. And he said his boss told him explicitly, like, we would have loved to have hired any of these college grads, but we just needed someone who knew how to do it. And the problem was their salary demands were too high because of their student loan debt.
Right. So that's what I think we have to correct. I don't think it has to be like, oh, we have to just get rid of college, because then I think we run the risk of reeling ourselves into a third world country with uneducated people. You know, and
I
back
think
when,
colleges are uneducating people.
well,
Well,
in some ways, I mean, I understand that.
I had similar for you. I was a theater major, and a lot of my college experience was doing plays. So I would even get credit for doing a play. I'd get 3 credit hours, and that was like on the ground training. So I came out of college being a professional, semi-professional. A lot of people, like your friend that you were mentioning earlier, apparently didn't doing their business major.
I think
Certain
I think
things
the
you
whole
don't
thing's a
need.
scam.
Depends on the college, depends on the
I
program.
think
But here's the thing. So my dad was one of the earliest coders of coders. Okay. So back in the 80s, before anybody was doing any of that stuff, my dad was like getting a math degree. They didn't even have computer science as a degree. They didn't have boot camps for coding or anything like that. Nobody was thinking this was going to be a thing. And he went to college for coding, for computer science, and then was, worked for the power company doing all of their stuff. And that was, in order for those early guys to get that information, they had to go to college in order to get it.
Before the internet.
My grandpa,
Before the internet.
My grandpa
Right.
created his own operating system for his tax business, and he didn't go to school for it.
Yeah, but still, like, in order to get, like, for example, Boeing runs on the same now operating the code that my dad knew. It's like they're trying to recruit dinosaurs out of retirement to come out. Like, they're like, oh crap, we don't have anybody no young kids know this code. It's only the older guys that know it. We need these guys to come out of retirement. But all of those guys learn that same language. I mean, you could maybe create your own. And I know even when my dad was doing it, he created his own things here and there. But to create something that is cohesive across large corporations or large companies that could be utilized together, integrated, everybody needed to have that same knowledge. And even now they're struggling because they can't find people with that knowledge.
I'm proficient in the Adobe suite. I didn't go to school for it. And it's cross-company and cross-computer and cross-program, We
What
use a bunch of
But
different...
somebody created Adobe Suite, and my guess is they went to college.
It was technically, it was a bunch of different people who are creating a bunch of different programs that eventually got bought out by the Adobe Corporation, I guess.
Yeah.
But there's also open source versions where communities just develop things by sharing free and open information. And
Apache. That's a good company. Does a lot
KDen
of
Live
open office and stuff.
for video editing and stuff. Ubuntu for operating systems.
I'm thinking about like science, and a lot of science you don't need, but like uniform, like you're talking about uniformity of information, so that they can like learn the language of science, like all the equations that have led to the next equation up to the equations of all. So they memorize this language, basically
Right.
a language. You don't necessarily need a college, but having an organized place where people can all go or to learn it all the same thing, so they
Hackerspaces.
can communicate.
But I still
Online hackerspaces.
No, physical hackers.
But you need people from all around the world to be able to. I mean, it could be physical too.
I think we need to bring people back to like apprenticeships and like hanging
I
out
do
and having
too.
community and learning
Yeah.
skills.
Yeah, I mean, I do think we need to change the way higher education is implemented and how it's viewed. Change the idea that, it has to be through university, but I still think we need higher education.
The age of automation on the way, the COVID lockdown causing all this unemployment, maybe it's the time for people to become mentors and to offer what they know to the younger generation.
Yeah. But see,
And
and
charge
also,
a
hey,
fee.
look, the pandemic was this is sort of my point. I don't think people learn as well unless they're with the group and they've got the competition, they've got the collaboration, they have people to talk to, they have peers groups. And now what we've seen online is people are not able to do it as well.
But there's nothing saying universities need to be that.
No, it could be.
Well,
Well,
I'll put it this
but
way.
I don't think you could just get rid. I mean, you're wanting to get rid of universities like some people want to get rid of private health insurance.
I think that universities have become predatory systems that exploit young people. They send these 18-year-olds into a system with no idea what their major should be. I think around
Right.
half of people change their major, and then they get saddled with massive debt they can never pay off, which is a
Right.
permanent indentured servitude, which does nothing to benefit them.
But that's the system. That's the issue. Right
So-
there.
The business of the
higher
university.
education.
The business.
I
of
feel
the
like that about the
university.
church. The business of the church bothers me,
Well,
but
listen,
the church
right.
doesn't bother me.
Right.
The university system at this point, in my opinion, is completely corrupt and broken, and it can't be salvaged.
Well, that's how Bernie
But-
Sanders feels about private health insurance.
how I feel about
But
the
I'm
church.
not saying abolish. I'm not saying abolish the idea of higher education. We can have universities. We just have to kind of purge and refresh them. And then
Yeah,
I'm all
I mean,
for
right.
like everyone you show up to a university and you hang out and you have fun and you build things and you explore things. And there's
You're
universities
just trying to
and there's
take
grants.
away the fun. Beer pong,
Hacker
what-
spaces are pretty
No,
fun.
I want way more.
We could build a hacker space. That'd be
We should. We actually. We
a bunch of
actually
3D
should.
printers, lasers.
I was a member of Hackerspace and I built a remote control can of green tea.
We just got a couple
It was
lasers.
very-
And listen,
I know. I got my face burned into.
Oh,
a
nice.
Cardboard out there.
You may be wondering how, in fact, did you create a remote control can of green tea? Did you put wheels on it?
Yeah, what
No.
is that?
Magic.
What I did was I took a piece of plastic with a couple motors on it. I took the bottom of an Arizona can, and I put it slightly off axis on one of the motors and then taped it on. And then on the back, I put a motor going the perpendicular to create gyroscopic stabilization. What would happen is the off-axis Arizona can in the front, when it spun, would create a vibration. The vibrations would reduce the friction between the can and the table to near zero. And so it would cause the can to float. You've seen these things. They have a little football game where the vibration makes them move around. You control it by spinning the reverse gyroscopic stabilizer, which causes it to go straight. And when you release it, it spins in circles. I just built that randomly. I had never worked with electronics or remote control or anything.
We'll help you get your patents filed. We take 5% of the patent for 2 years and then release the patent back to you.
I'd rather create a hackerspace where we just make everything free and open source.
We need to help people patent their stuff, though.
I think you have more self-awareness on this issue, Tim. Because
are you calling me an ace of spades?
Yeah. I think that for you, things are different because you're obviously highly intelligent. And so that is an unfair advantage. You know, you're talking about these crazy things you're creating and stuff. And
privilege.
Right. Well, it's a privilege of intelligence that others don't have. And you have the privilege of maybe certain sort of self, you know, the ability to just get something done because you put your mind to it or something. And others need the encouragement from others. And
would you? Sorry, I don't know if you're.
Yeah,
keep telling me. Keep it coming.
Yeah, here I was, like, you know, giving you compliments about being a genius, and you're trying to stop me. You know, so I think that is what you have to. Not everybody can learn in the same environment. That's your criticism of university. So that's also my defense of university.
If you could go back in time and not take out the student loans, would you do it?
If I could do what?
Go back in time and not take out student loans, would you do it?
And not take. So if I didn't get this, yeah, I would. I feel like
so when I'm telling young people don't go to school, what I'm really saying is, I often say this: if your parents are paying for it, if you're rich, by all means do what you want. It's the student loan system that's created. It is a predatory indentured servitude factory.
I would say I would take them out again. I couldn't have gone to school without them.
What would you need to go to school for?
Theater, acting.
But
and
I
that's
got
like
a hot girlfriend. It was amazing.
And that's
I was
like,
popular for the first time in my life.
And that's a degree that people would say, that's a sham, don't even do it. And, you know, I got
It built my confidence like crazy.
Right, exactly. And I did music and philosophy, also kind of useless when
what kind
you
of
get
music?
out. Jazz. I'm a jazz drummer.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
We'll jam later.
That's right.
We should definitely go to Super Chats, though, because we pushed it a little bit.
Yep.
So we'll take the audience questions. If you haven't already, smash that like button, subscribe, and go to timcast.com, because we're going to have a very special, exclusive. I think we're going to do the Ace of Spades, the secrets of the universe. And I guess you're going to reveal to the world my where my intelligence comes from or something. You were praising me just a moment ago.
Yeah. Oh, now you want more.
Carry on, yes.
I'm kidding. But I think it's really, really fascinating.
The
You were bringing that up.
spades, like you're a spade. What are this? What's
Ace
a
of
spade?
spades.
You're the
But
ace.
we'll-
I'm a six of spades, by the way.
Right, you're the six of I'm an eight of clubs.
So you're saying Ian's not
Lydia's
smart.
an
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Spiritually,
we'll
spiritually,
save
I'm
it.
very
We'll save it.
smart.
Well, timcast.com, become a member. That'll be up later, but we're going to read your super chats right now. All right, let's see. What do we got here? Rocky Tao says, I know someone in the Minneapolis PD who told me that the Chaz here has been around since the riot days, but more of a simple no-go zone for police. It's only getting media coverage now since we're nearing the Chauvin trial. Chauvin trial? Is that how you say it? Chauvin?
Chauvin, I think is the pronunciation. Or Chauvin.
Chauvin?
Chauvin.
Yeah.
Morgan Burns says, the fur boss sounds like a true capitalist. Ha capitalist. He's atop of the org chart, so he's got to do what he says, and Yevon says,
Yeah, true.
Track Media Only says, no, you were children that never grew up. It has never been we all have that. It was about we all have the equal opportunity for that. Grow up children, too many spoiled and have never been poor. I think one of the big problems that we have these days is that there's a lot of young people who don't understand hardship. They were born into like the peak epitome of wealth in this country. And now that things are kind of not going so well because we're in a golden age, they're like, why is my life not perfect?
I don't know. I think the opposite a little bit, actually, because a lot of these kids grew up after the 2008 crash, and suddenly their parents lost their homes and they were told they couldn't have things.
I guess
they
I mean
couldn't
like
afford, you know,
right.
this, that, or the other.
Yeah, I think. Well, I guess what I mean is, I think I agree with you that the older generation had everything, and it was this peak, and they were born at a time like when people were doing well and things started to get worse. 2008 was a smack to the bottom, and then all of a sudden millennials entering the job market were like, what?
Yeah, no job market.
It's not my fault this happened.
I
and they blame them. They get angry.
I had first world hardship, like my parents had middle class, but they were like, get a job when you were 12. Like I had
Yeah.
to get a job when I was 12. But
I had a job when I was 10.
what I didn't learn was how to run a business, and that really messed me up. If I had learned that, but like you were working at a business that your
My family's
parents
business.
owned,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Right. I was just going to say that's how I learned, as I watched my family have businesses. And I think that generational knowledge, we hear this talked about a lot on the left, and there is something to that, which is not just generational wealth, but the generational wealth is actually generational knowledge.
Yeah.
What you learned from watching your parents. When they start a business, I watched my dad have to, we went through a lot of hardship in order to have him build that business, and we had to make a lot of sacrifices, and I watched it happen in order for it to grow. And I think that knowledge is really important, but you don't get that except through that kind of apprenticeship sort of thing.
Let's read this one. We have a lot of super chats, guys, so I really appreciate it, but I don't know if we can read as many as we normally do. We'll try. Gizmo says, when I went to college, we discussed the financial part before I got classes. Did you not know what you were doing? Why should I pay your debt? You shouldn't. I do not believe in this write a $50,000 check at all. I think that's ridiculous. I do think it's insane that there are people who took out like $50,000 in loans and now owe $200,000.
Right.
Like, what? Like, that's not fair. You shouldn't owe that much money. I understand there's interest. And some people say, well, you should have read the contract. And I'm like, dude, an 18-year-old who has some 40-year-old predatory loan officer or whatever be like, trust me, kid, I'm here looking out for you. The school's got your back. You're supposed to do it. I'm not blaming the kid for being ripped off by a con artist.
But I think the banks should have to pay it.
Yeah.
I just heard
can we
that-
make Bill Gates pay it?
I just heard that our Fannie Mae Freddie Mac bailout from 2008 is actually $14 trillion over 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so why don't they pay it?
That's incredible. We're still paying it. We've only paid like $4 trillion of the 16 trillion that we owe these banks
that
from
we
the
owe them?
2008 bailout.
Well, no, then
I'd
they
have to
just-
confirm that, but I just read that today. It was jaw dropping.
Scott Bloss says, student debt is your own fault. And I have more student debt than you, and I'm younger than you. There are arguments for toppling the state. Your financial choices aren't one of them. Phony anarchists have no justification.
But did you understand what compound interest was? Did you do the calculations? Did they teach you the calculations of how to calculate compound interest? If they didn't, then was it really your responsibility? Because you could argue it was predatory.
I think it's absolutely predatory. And I think it's absurd to think we're going to take some kid, tell them they have to do this, because that's what they've been they were screaming in my ears. You have to go to college. You have no choice. And I was like, nah, I ain't doing it. But they were like, here's all the loan money I've taken out. And I'm like, I'm not going to pay that back. Are you nuts? Don't worry, we're going to give you the money. I was like, wait, you're going to give me money, and then I got to give you more money? You know, my favorite thing ever was, I was like 16. I read an article from, I was a Clinton-era economist. And he said, if you go to any investor and tell them, I will give you, you're going to invest $40,000 into a 4-year investment, and after 4 years, you will owe $40,000 plus interest, they'll laugh in your face. That's the stupidest investment I've ever heard. And now they try and add, but it's, it's the experience in the school. And it's like, no. If you had $40,000 what he basically said was, they did this chart where he said, if you are 18 and you go work at McDonald's, and after, the average amount of time where a person sees a promotion to assistant manager is like X amount of months, your average hourly wage will go up to the average number, which is this for McDonald's. He was like, by the time you're 22 and your peers are graduating college, they'll have negative $40,000 plus interest, and you will be a manager making $40,000 a year. By the time you're both 28, they will still be paying off their debt and the interest and trying to find work experience, and you will now be making, X amount of dollars with a savings of, X. And he basically showed that a person who doesn't go to college without the debt has more net worth while they're younger. So the issue for me when I saw that was like, would I rather be a 24-year-old with a good salary enjoying my youth, or a 24-year-old settled with massive debt struggling to find a job and then hoping I could pay it off eventually? I'm going to enjoy being young and go skateboarding and play music.
I was kind of like, what do I want to do with my life? My parents were like, the money is not the important thing.
I think the question should be, when you're 50, what do you want your life to be like?
Dog in the woods. Cabin made of twigs and fishing down by the river.
Well, it's just that, if you don't, the math works out up until you're only a certain point, but then suddenly all the people in their 40s and 50s start to surpass.
What have I done with my life?
Well, they surpass those who didn't go to college, and they're the ones now living a good life with a retirement, and you're still hustling and bustling in a blue-collar job.
Spurious correlation, is that the right phrase? Spurious correlation? So,
I told you not these fancy words.
This is a good one.
What ends up happening is there's an assumption that people go to college make more money and people who don't go to college make less money, when the reality is people who are willing to do the work make more money. And so there's a tendency among, say, high school dropouts, for instance. They say, if you drop out of high school, you're not going to make any money. It's like, well, it's because people who drop out of high school are typically not doing it for work ethic related reasons. So you're associating high school dropout with negativity as opposed to lack of work ethic and the negativity. So if you drop out of high school, there's a bunch of people who dropped out of high school who are famous skateboarders, athletes, musicians, podcast hosts, etc.
Mathematicians. Einstein dropped out of school.
High school?
I think so.
So
yeah.
the issue
he
is
dropped out early.
When they see high school dropout, they assume everybody who did it for the same reason, and thus they'll be broke. Some people drop out because they're actually working harder and they're being held back by the institution.
Yeah, the school's not going to make you successful. It's the
so
drive.
what happens is you'll look at somebody who doesn't go to college and someone who does, and then see an average, where the reality is people who are willing to say, I'm going to do 4 years of this work because I hope I can accomplish something. Mm-hmm. Whereas the average person who's not going to do it is not doing it because they're driven. They're doing it because they're not driven. So it's a drive factor versus a lack of drive factor. Now, if you're smart enough to avoid the system and find a way to gain experience outside of that, then you will absolutely make substantially more money. And in fact, college dropout billionaires make 3 times as much money as college graduate billionaires. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I think it's PhD. Or maybe it's both, actually. It's been a long time since I've researched this stuff.
I just think if we keep encouraging people to not go to college, I hope you guys all like your stuff from China. Because we're going to need the Chinese engineers, we're going to need the Chinese architecture, we're going to need the Chinese technology, we're going to need the Chinese everything. Because we won't have any intelligent Americans to do any of it.
Einstein dropped out of high school at the age of 15. Einstein did. He said, F it, when he was 15. This isn't for me. It's too slow. He didn't like the way it worked, so he left and learned it on his own.
I just think a country that's willing to invest and educate their population is going to beat us.
But who's choosing
it's a
the
matter of
education?
national security.
What are they?
You are correct.
What's being taught?
The school system right now is predatory and it's not accomplishing that.
Right.
And what are they
right.
teaching?
Well, so
raise your hand. Wait till you're called on. Be a good boy. Don't step out of line.
Colleges are different.
They're making me a soldier, basically.
Well, we'll read some more. We have a very, very important one here. BlackRock Beacon says, Roof Koreans are a well-regulated militia. Change my mind. I will not attempt to. Jacob Howard says, yes, you were promised the American dream, but the country has gone further and further to the left, and here we are. Is the solution more leftism? Perhaps conservatives have a role in this life. Perhaps.
It's like when you think about momentum, if it's swinging far to the left, it's like a swing set. You can push it and make it swing all the way around. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
I will also just give a quick shout out too. If you go to timcast.com and click shop, we have a shirt that says it's a Diamond Hands Gorilla shirt. It's a gorilla wearing sunglasses, smoking, holding wads of cash, and wearing a suit because I guess there's a meme among the GameStop people about, gorillas are stronger together or whatever. And I guess
right.
So I decided we had the gorilla shirt. I was like, let's put him in a suit and give him money and like make a thing. So check it out. Javi J says, I came from an immigrant family. We were told growing up that the American dream was to work hard to give a better life to our children.
Yeah, that's true.
And somehow people think it's that like they don't have kids and they're going to be rich and swimming in an infinity pool and posting photos on Instagram.
Whether they're your biological children or not, it's to make it better for the children.
We have a lot of super chats. We just way too many super chats, my friends. You guys are awesome. Nick Seamus says, give me Ian or give me death.
Seamus.
And give me a guest that knows what she's talking about when she talks about guns. Ooh, I got some spicy
we
words
should go
for you,
deeper
Kim.
on guns.
Troy Dingman says, one of the biggest things the founding fathers screwed up on was not implementing a congressional dictionary to define what words mean in the content of the laws. So we would be able to refer back to it. Completely agree. In legal documents, it'll say like very, very specific, like this word hereby means this. And they make sure the words are all very, very, specifically defined. VS says, CA gun stores have been completely depleted. No ammo. Guns on back order. I bought a Glock in November. Wouldn't come in until February. Guns on consignment are extremely inflated. People are getting into reloading. It's been this way since the lockdown started. Wow.
It's true. We couldn't get any weapons during the lockdown.
Stephen A. He says, historical scholar here. I definitely trust this. No offense, Stephen. I don't know your credentials. You could 100% own a cannon and military-grade weapons back in the day.
I want some linkage to like the facts on
Yeah,
that.
I want to know. I'm curious.
Frenzy Film says, Tim, felons can lose the right to arms. The U.S. Constitution says you can lose the right through due process. All right, well, there you go. I was wrong about that, I suppose. The 13th Amendment needs to be reformed, in my opinion, because it allows slavery in the event that you're convicted of a crime, and I think that's wrong. I think slavery is wrong and just should not be in any capacity. I think our prison system is supposed to be rehabilitative, not retribution or punishment. All right, let's see. Powder PZ says, I'm running for Congress in CA to go to change.org PZ for Congress to sign my petition to get my name on the ballot. Let's show the establishment we're in control. All right. Well, I don't know what your policy positions are. Hopefully they're good ones. But either way, people have heard about you. Thanks for the super chat. Voodoo M says, is a harpoon gun a firearm? I don't know. Is it?
I don't know.
Maybe.
Interesting.
Depends
Yeah,
on
look it
how
up.
the chemicals used to project the thing.
Here we go.
Oh boy.
John Hutto says basic firearm safety and training should be part of every high school education.
Yes.
Ian, you could not pull my gun from my holster even if I didn't try to stop you. There are holsters designed for retention.
Yeah, but does everyone use those holsters?
No, and that's a good point. But there also are some very, very simple ones that don't even have any crazy mechanism. It's just that you have to pull it out a certain direction.
So maybe if you had to have a holstered gun and a safety holster, that could be something.
Bro, if you're responsible for it. It's all.
If someone has like a gun tucked in their belt, like a loaded pistol with the safety off, and they're on the train and they're standing there with their hand up, like it's just asking for disaster, in my opinion.
Those people will get arrested if something happens.
But what's going to happen? What if they're dead? What if the kid gets shot?
Or what if the
they-
bullet hits a train and
Yeah,
then
geez.
can cause some
loose guns?
Yeah.
So I
Right?
like this holster thing.
Yeah.
A nice tight holster.
Teach responsibility.
Maybe you can
yeah.
open. Well, you can open carry. Maybe the law should not be about that you can't do it. It should be that it should have to be done in a secure holster, fitted properly and regulated by the government. In which case, you have the ability to bear arms. You can't brandish the weapon, but it's in a secure holster only you can pull from. That way, it's not dangling with the safety off or something like that. It's in a secured holster.
You could do like thumbprint activation, like your cell phone.
Yeah, something like that.
In addition to another security feature.
Big Dog Born says, I've been shooting all my life. Got my first 22 at the age of 4. I view firearms as tools, no different than a shovel or an axe. Yeah, I mean, if you swung a pickaxe at someone's head, you'd cause serious injury to them as well. I guess, things can be dangerous. Globalist Channel says, Tim, vaccine ready May 1st. I heard that. Joe Biden apparently made some big announcement earlier, so that's
Is it
great.
the Moderna one?
No, I think it was...
Johnson & Johnson. He
Yeah,
did
was it?
like 100 something doses, maybe 100 million doses of Johnson & Johnson or something.
Oh, there you go.
I think that's what they were saying.
More than enough, I guess.
Who owns that company? I'm looking.
Johnson
it
&
up.
Johnson.
That one is
probably.
actually going to do They're doing the vaccine nonprofit.
Oh,
Oh,
cool.
interesting.
Yeah.
Tree of Liberty says, in 2005, we shot skeet on the football field in high school. Also, my published philosophy professor called Tom MacDonald an astute philosopher.
I would
then
too.
commented he was doing very valuable philosophical work.
I would say
Wow,
the
that's
same.
really amazing.
I say that about rap. People think I'm crazy.
John Sochecki says, spoiled rich white Westerners are angrier over the Alberta-Wisconsin pipeline than they are than they are at the Turkey Qatar pipeline, as if bombs raining down in the Middle Easterners isn't a problem for them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Nicholas Cervini says that he was suicidal his whole life. I thought I would lose my firearms. I'd never had found the help I desperately needed.
Just got a little news on Johnson & Johnson. The majority shareholders, 2 of the top 3 are the Vanguard Group and BlackRock, 2 of the
interesting.
largest investment firms in the world, along with State Street. They basically own 8% of every Apple, Microsoft, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson. You look down the list.
Jeez.
Crazy, powerful companies.
Roberto Flores says, Tim taking a stand on 2A. Nice. Oh, yeah.
Been
Yep.
doing it.
That's certainly the case. And it's not so much that I like the idea of everybody having guns. I just don't think it's an authoritarian position to try and supersede the Constitution without proper amendment. So then amend it, NOS says that they've been suicidal in the past, and they went for treatment for it. They did the equivalent of paying their debt to society. Treatment centers are abusive, by the way, but now they say they're mentally healthy. They want a gun, and they can't because of California. Interesting. Curious Mishap says, Tim is 200% right on the suicide angle. Taking away the gun doesn't do much of anything. Butter knives don't work. Wow. They say they tried and battled severe depression their entire life.
Wow.
Banning never works. Prohibition, anyone?
I knew someone that took a bunch of pills to die, but then it didn't kill them, and they were glad it didn't kill them.
Right.
But I think a shotgun probably would have got the job done, and maybe they would have
Real quick,
regretted it.
Right.
Kim, they're enjoying that you're from California and pointing out the problems of California. Will You Teach Me says, I love to see Californians complain. But I don't think it's fair because I think you're a smart and reasonable person. So pointing out the problems of what's going on and being critical of it is exactly what we need from California. Lockdie says, you can make an AR-15 with a drill press from Amazon. The instructions exist online and has been for a very long time. Yeah. All right, where are we at? Jesse says, you saved my business, Tim, due to me listening to your pending economy shutdown. I was stocked up on supplies to prepare for it.
Yes.
Thank you. Kim Iversen has changed my mind on many topics. Please have her on again, as one Tim IRL is not enough. Time for the open dialogue with her.
Very cool.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, people were saying that you were the queen in the chat earlier.
Of
Oh,
course.
really? Because
Yeah.
I'm getting hate mail in my inbox.
Yeah.
Ready for all of it.
Yes.
You know, people need to. It's like be polite. You know what I mean? Like be nice. If I think if people disagree with what you're saying, obviously I think a lot of people who watch me agree with what I say. That's why they watch the show. But I think if they disagree with a guest or you, the answer is like, hey, Kim, I thought you were great. Thanks for coming on Tim's show and being willing to have an open dialogue. I'd like to discuss with you these ideas.
I found out this weird phenomenon where if you are saying something that is complex and other people don't understand it, they'll look at you and say, they're not making any sense. They're an idiot because they don't understand it. And so to not take as much of that stuff personally usually.
Well, I mean, I at this point can't take anything personal. But this one person in particular is getting mad saying that they didn't like this is what I'm confused about. Because he says he doesn't like my viewpoint on Second Amendment, saying that I don't know anything. You know, here I am trying to take everybody's rights away. But I thought I made it really clear that I was a pro-Second Amendment, almost at one point an extremist on it. Where
Well,
I was like,
that's-
I want to have a nuke if the government can have a nuke. And so I'm not one who is for taking away weapons of any kind. So it's kind of a funny, like, to get mad.
Yeah, and
like, what was it exactly that made them believe I want to take rights away?
And I'll clarify too, if like I don't want everyone in New York to be having a gun. I think it would be a lot of chaos. However, so long as the Constitution exists, you can't just choose to erase it. So I don't know what to say to somebody when they're like, I have a right to do it. I'm like, that's true. It's in the Constitution. I can read it. So I personally don't like it. I am not the king of this country, and I can't snap my fingers and make anybody do anything. So
Until we make our own country that we talked about, right? Then you can't.
Well,
be
I
king.
mean, if
well,
we-
you have to be the
You
ace.
need a standing
Sorry.
army.
You're the ace of spades.
If we
on
buy a
that.
plot of land and make our own, like Timsville or whatever, everybody needs to be armed because a well-regulated militia is required for the survival of our free state.
Is it going to
you
be
know.
like Hunger Games or something?
No, it's going to be like, if a bear shows up,
Self-defense.
Hunger Games.
we need to protect ourselves from the bear, I guess.
What if the U.S. Army shows up?
Well,
More Hunger
if,
Games.
I don't like it.
If the
I don't like
U.S.
this
Army
direction.
shows up, we smile and wave and say, "Hi, gentlemen, how's it going?" We shake their hand and then we
Or
tell
they're
them.
They'd wanna
give me
join.
your stuff.
I mean,
You
I don't
belong
think
to us now.
they're not going to take our stuff.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, just pay your taxes.
Sovereign
We'll be like,
nation.
all right.
U.S. Army not taking a sovereign nation stuff.
Listen.
Imagine that.
Here's what we'll do. We'll start the sovereign nation, and then when everyone's like, you're just people living in America pretending it's a sovereign nation. No. We're not paying taxes. We're just paying America for security, defense, access, roads. And so it's just our nation is supplying, a payment, a percentage of our GDP, like all these other countries are supposed to be doing for NATO. You see?
Okay. So like,
But literally, it's
UAE?
just us living in a field and paying taxes.
So we'll build like the United Arab Emirates of the United States, like a
Right,
small
right.
community of super high tech development.
That'd be
Although we shouldn't have to pay property tax. I'm totally.
Then we got to be a
completely
religion,
against-
right?
I'm completely against
could start a
property tax.
religion.
I think
Yeah.
it should be totally banned.
L. Ron Hubbard did it.
So let's be a religion. Then you have to be for church.
I like
No.
church.
All right, let's see. Ryan Einstetter says the mailroom job wouldn't get a pay raise. It would become a sub 40-hour per week part-time job. Come on, guys, this isn't hard to see. Take your heads out of the clouds. But why would a sub 40-hour $1 a week not get a pay raise?
Right.
So
Because it would still be tied to no
Right.
matter how many hours they work.
our hourly wages would go up. Clef the Misfit says progressives talking about raising the minimum wage are looking at the problem backwards. Why is the cost of living shot far past wages? It's Federal Reserve inflation. Abolish the Fed, costs will drop.
Yeah, I think that
Like
there's
everyone's just
something
like, yes.
Yeah, I think there's something to that.
Yeah, it's basically that so long as they can keep printing money in the way they do, they can extract value from us,
Yeah.
spend it on whatever they want, and we just get poorer every single day.
And they loan it to us at interest, which is crazy. Those promissory notes.
Riley Luann says, Tim, huge problem with even a progressive tax. When rich get taxed, they offset by increasing price of their product, making us pay the tax. True to a certain extent. It's not so simple to say that because there's a limit to what people are willing to pay for certain products. It may drive inflation for sure for that reason, but it's tough. I like the idea of the progressive tax for the reason stated, but ultimately I think it won't work because giving the government money doesn't solve the problem. It
But
actually makes
also,
war worse.
Most billionaires, I don't think, have a product. So they wouldn't even be able to do that. That's not how they're rich.
You see, here, Evil Black Cat says, it's amazing listening to this. While all of you seem to recognize the core problem is the government having all the power, you keep mentally evading it while advocating for more government power. Mental Ouroboros. I literally said I like the idea of a progressive tax, but giving the money to the government doesn't solve the problem.
You also have to define the government.
Well, the U.S. government is just a monopoly.
It's a representation of the people.
Supposed to be.
Yeah. Like if 99% of us went and did something, the government, that would be the government doing it.
I don't think so. No.
Yeah. They're all part of it.
Pretty sure,
Part of us, you know?
there are a lot of things the American people don't like and oppose, but the government
They're just
doesn't
disorganized. If we were more organized.
care. Yeah.
We just have a government that's not representative of the people right now. But if
Right.
it were representative of the people, then it wouldn't be such a problem of them having power because it would be the people having power, right?
Zanzibar says statists that complain about roads are anti-capitalist. We were supposed to have flying cars by now, and it's those people keeping us grounded. Follow Zanzibar_Daleks and happy belated birthday, Tim. Thank you very much. Anthony Hamilton says, Tim, thank you for being real. Can you please look into Massachusetts? We are just playing follow the leader and nothing is wrong. It's pathetic. Please look into it. It needs exposure. Well, okay.
Like the whole state?
I guess something's going on with lockdowns or whatever.
Oh.
Baron of Grey Matter says, it is against the law to discuss your salary with other employees. I'm German. You're horribly wrong about this. Oh.
Maybe they can't discuss it with one another, but I do know that it's transparent.
I'm not familiar with German wage law. Forest Mommy says, I have a concierge doctor, $1,000 a year. All in-office visits covered. One-on-one care, tests at cost. It's great. 36 with no health issues or prescriptions. Need more of it. Efficient business. And then people make fun of Chaz and things like that. MLD says, I didn't go to college because I didn't think it was smart to take on that debt. Now my taxes should go to pay off debt for people who voluntarily took on that debt that can't pay, and I have to compete with them for my next job. I say no, good sir. I say we get rid of the compounded interest so they have to pay back what they borrowed, and that's it. What if the loan system was you had to pay back only on inflation? So no compounded interest. It was basically just like you had to pay back the inflated value, I suppose.
Oh, that's even better than the interest. The interest is what's
No, that
really
probably
the
won't work
problem.
either.
Yeah, that would work.
You think so? So like if you
Sure.
borrowed 30 grand and then like each year it just adds like, 1%.
Yeah, something. It increases.
Match
You just
inflation.
pay back 30 plus whatever the rate of inflation was.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Especially for government-backed student loans, that's exactly how it should be. Now, private loan, maybe they can get away with something, but
Superman, if he wasn't scared of green rocks, says, Tim, can you wish Stacey Herbert happy birthday and give a shout out to the Orange Pill YouTube channel? You talking about Max Kaiser is the reason why I got into Bitcoin. Stacey, happy birthday. And shout out to Stacey and Max and the Orange Pill podcast. If you guys want to learn about Bitcoin and you want to stop being poor, then you should definitely check out Max's his podcast, the Orange Pill podcast. He has this really funny meme. It's like a picture of him laughing. It says, have fun staying poor, for like the people who don't buy Bitcoin. And I'll just put it this way. If you had been a fan of Max Kaiser and watched his show and trusted him, you would be worth hundreds of millions of dollars right now, and I'm not exaggerating. There was a point where I guess there's like a story about how Max gave Alex Jones like 10,000 Bitcoin or something, and then Alex lost it because people didn't listen. They didn't believe him, and he was right the whole time.
I want to shout out Stacey. You are amazing. Thank you for being Max's life. You have made him organized in a way he never could have done on his own. I love you, Max. You guys are rock
I
stars.
wish back then when Max was yelling about buying Bitcoin, I just did it. And I didn't. And I've known the guy for a long time. And it's like, man, if I had a time machine, if I could send a message back in time, send to the man, buy 1,000 Bitcoin.
Maybe you're just talking to yourself in modern day. Maybe you're receiving the message right now, buy Bitcoin.
I know, and I'm still not doing it.
Do it. Do it. Don't wait.
Oh, man. All right, let's see. Where are we? Let's find a good super chat. What do we got? Frank says, Tim, you're from Chicago. You should know it's not what you know, it's who you know. Oh, yeah, in Chicago, in many of these blue places, these states, you can get a gun if you got the right connections. You know?
just the connection to Gary, Indiana, right?
No, like if you want to legally own a gun and walk around Chicago, then just if you know the right people, they can get you through that process. So what ends up happening is wealthy individuals and celebrities in like these certain states, these blue states like New Jersey, like, Illinois or Maryland or California, if you have access, yeah, you can easily get a gun.
They just shuffle your request to the front of the paperwork.
Basically. So it's like in some of these states, you need to have a justification for why you need to be able to bear arms. And it's like, I'm rich. And they go, okay, I'm famous. Oh, absolutely. Regular person? Of course not. Your constitutional rights are meaningless, pleb. Turtleburger says, I don't think you should be able to take out a student loan amount for more than 1 year's average starting pay of that degree. I think that would make people choose more carefully and bring down tuition. Or maybe, I don't know, people have to get jobs while they're in school and they can't take out the loans for the full cost of tuition, or we need to stop guaranteeing it so that the price of schools go down.
Some degrees, they don't let you get a job.
Yeah, I tried to get a job. Well, I did have a job while I was in college. I couldn't do class, the job, and the theater shows. I had to pick 2 of the 3.
Same with music. You couldn't do it. But law school, I don't think they even let you get a job while you're in law school.
They will not let you work.
Yeah, and same, I think, with medical school. You're not allowed.
Wolfalt de Leon says, Kim, your mom loves Trump. What do you think of him?
Well, like, I mean, I think he's I'm an anti-establishment person, so I started off really hating Trump. I definitely had Trump derangement syndrome in the beginning.
Like what year?
You were cured.
Yeah, I also had, I was very establishment, I think, in my viewpoints in the beginning, like a while ago before I really started researching.
Like in the 90s?
No, like I would say when in 2016 even, I was more progressive. I liked Bernie Sanders, but I think I just kind of fell into the establishment narrative. And then, but then the more research I did, I was like, oh my gosh, the establishment is such a problem. And with Trump, I think I started with Trump derangement syndrome, but then through time, I found myself having to defend him over and over again, which really upset a lot of my viewers. But it was because the left had gone so deranged on him. And then I think as I started to defend him, I almost had sympathy for him, right? Because I'd be like, gosh, they're just making stuff up, or they're, and so really I just saw a guy that, I don't hate him and I don't love him, but I did think that he would have been better than Biden getting in office. I was very anti-Biden.
Yeah,
I'm still anti-Biden.
I agree.
Yeah.
David Marcella says, please tell Ian an armed society is a polite society.
I've heard that before.
Oh, wow. Drew the RN says, please bring Kim on as staff. See, some people really enjoy your presence.
Sorry, Lydia, I'm getting your job.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Loot says, stop the Fed from giving money to all the banks at 0% interest. Make banks get their capital from their account holders. Pay us interest again. Interesting.
That'd be cool.
All right, let's do a couple more. Let's see. Where are we at? Jonathan Duger says, freedom is sloppy. Suicide isn't going to stop without guns. Freedom is sloppy. It's tough. It is tough stuff. We'll do one more. Lucas Jeezy says you should do a super chat giveaway. What does that mean?
Maybe give away T-shirts or something.
I can be your first winner. Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, we have a bunch of the Diamond Hands Gorilla shirts coming in. So
we
maybe
should make
can
that guy the first winner too for bringing that up.
Lucas Jeezy. How do we contact Lucas?
Not sure. He'd have to email us at spintheufo@gmail.com.
You're going to get all kinds of Lucas.
Luke, yeah. Every single person. But he also adds Ian for vice president.
Oh.
Just vice president?
Voice is crazy cracking. Well, you got to be the president first.
No, it would be Trump Crossland.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
All right, my friends,
Take
we are
it.
going to have a crazy, spacey conversation about like tarot or like astrology and like the secrets of my. I want to learn the secrets of how I'm an ace of spades and how that gives me psychic powers.
Oh,
So that's going to be over at timcast.com, and just it should be up in about an hour or so. But make sure to follow me on all social media platforms. Why do I keep doing that? All social media platforms at Timcast. My other channels are youtube.com/Timcast and youtube.com/TimcastNews. This show is live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. So smash that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell. And if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify or any other podcast platform, leave us those good 5-star reviews and talk about how awesome we are, because it really, really does help.
It does.
You want to shout out anything else, Kim?
You just follow my YouTube, please, because I'm being super suppressed and they haven't let me gain a single subscriber in about a year. So I would like to see if this works.
Yeah.
So if a bunch of you will subscribe, then maybe we'll see if I can break through that algorithm in some way.
It's always important that, people who want to, get more content from Kim subscribe to the channel, and make sure you actually go and watch it. The algorithm is a nasty beast. You got to be careful.
So you click the thumbs up buttons when you pop into the video, even if you only watch it for a short period of time.
Always smashing the like button.
Yes.
That's what you need. You need people to smash the like button for you.
Yeah, I think
and
it's
the
all...
notification bell helps.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything that helps me. But yeah, go to Kim Iversen, YouTube, follow, subscribe, smash, all that stuff. Smash,
Crush.
subscribe. Crush.
Devastate.
Ian?
Hey guys, thank you so much for coming. I love you. Ian Crossland. You can follow me at iancrossland.net if you want to check out all my socials, and I have a merchandise store that's pretty cool. I'll be adding more stuff there in the future.
Very
Thanks
cool.
for coming.
Yeah, so I think that Kim should be on the other side of the camera. I don't think you should be over here pushing buttons. If we did bring you on, I think that'd be great. Oh,
Look
I
at her
did
trying to
discover-
save her job.
I know, it's true. What did I say? I love my job. I was going to say, too, that a harpoon gun is not considered firearm.
Wow.
Firearms have to have gunpowder,
Huh.
I suppose, apparently, according to Reddit, which knows everything.
So Ian was right.
Yeah.
I
So
will
a
question.
full auto, belt-fed
Now we're talking.
harpoon gun?
harpoon gun.
Yeah. I don't know.
Swing for your
Sounds
life.
Good. Anyway, I am Sour Patch Lids on Twitter and on Minds, and I am Real Sour Patch Lids on Instagram and Gab, so follow me there.
We will be back at timcast.com with an exclusive segment talking about this weird secrets of what it means to be an ace of spades and
Destiny cards.
Destiny cards.
That's what it is,
Very
destiny
interesting. The
cards.
secrets of the universe. We'll see you all there, and thanks for hanging out.
Bye, guys.